Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another special edition of Blasphemer's Bible. We have to do it on Wednesday because, as I mentioned before, this Saturday, when we would normally be doing this, I will be giving a debate in Fort Worth for DebateCon. And then a week from today, or a week from then, I will be in Boston for SatanCon. And then a week after that, I will be in Calgary for ReasonCon. And some of you assembled here will be with me there. Yes?
Yes! I'm so excited.
I am looking forward to that. I am.
I am too. And we're going to see the Mighty Chicken and Neil 604 and Godless Mom, Courtney, and a whole bunch of other. She's also speaking, which is going to be awesome. So yeah, I'm just super excited. And then we get to go to the Royal Tyrrell Museum on Sunday and look at all the dinosaurs.
That will be pretty awesome. I got a guided tour of their museum, the lab behind the museum, and
You just have to brag. You're so much cooler than everybody.
Shut up. I was talking to the dog, dear, not you. So we are doing Exodus 13. Anybody have any opening commentary?
My opening commentary is that I think this chapter has 6 mitzvot according to Jewish halakha.
6 mitzvot.
Yes.
I would like to say that the consecration of the firstborn is apparently very unlucky, being as it is the 13th. And they're still carrying around the bones of Joseph, though. So respect for honoring your elders.
Okay. And we also have a super chat to start with. So Phantom Stars X offers $5. Thank you. And says, just wanted to say thank you for all you do, Aaron. Loving the series so far. Keep fighting the good fight and looking forward to your debate later. Thank you so much for that. Sincerely. All right. Anybody else? Or are we going to jump into it? Already? Oh, yes. M. Doug offers 10 pounds and says, all the best on your journey. Thank you again. So who's reading today?
I suppose I can.
read.
It's been a while.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have to devise a lottery system or get some dice, some die, maybe some Dungeons Dragons die and assign us each numbers.
Yeah, we could do like a wheel through Streamlabs.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah. But yeah, I can pick it up with chapter 13. So I'm not gonna have much to say until the end of the chapter, but most of my commentary will be on 17 through 22. Yeah. So that's where most of my commentary on this chapter is going to concentrate. So I'm
that's
totally
the
cool with
so read on until Tomer stops you.
Until verse 10.
Verse 10. Okay. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, consecrate unto me each firstborn, breach of each womb among the Israelites in man and in beast. It is mine. And Moses said to the people, remember this day on which you went out to Egypt from the house of slaves, for by strength of hand the Lord brought you out from here, and unleavened stuff shall not be eaten. Today you are going out in the month of the new grain. And so when the Lord brings you to the land of the Canaanite and the Hittite and the Amorite and the Hivite and the Jebusite, which he swore to your fathers to give to you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall perform this service in this month. 7 days shall you eat flat bread, and on the 7th day a festival to the Lord. Flat bread shall be eaten through the 7 days, and no leavened stuff of yours shall be seen, and no leavening of yours shall be seen in all your territory. And you shall tell your son on that day, saying, for the sake of what the Lord did for me when I was out of Egypt. And it shall be a sign for you on your hand and a remembrance between your eyes, so that the Lord's teaching will be in your mouth. For with a strong hand the Lord brought you out of Egypt. and you shall keep this statute at its fixed time year after year.
Okay.
So
So
is this-
Apparently,
the
my
part-
lord is Jin.
Is this the part where they justify like the black box?
Yeah.
the tefillin.
Yeah,
Sort
yeah.
of. This is
Same, yeah.
one part of it. I mean, the justification comes in Deuteronomy, I think.
Sure.
But you are right that this is kind of reminiscent for the tefillin. But
Mhm.
first off, I wanted to say in verse 2 that this verse is the origin of the commandment to redeem the firstborn to the Lord. And this commandment comes in 3 variations, which are described in either future verses or future chapters, which is 1, human firstborn, 2, cattle firstborn, and 3, donkey firstborn. And this chapter focuses on donkey firstborn specifically, I think. Human firstborn and cattle is in Numbers 18, I think.
If memory serves, and I'm fairly certain it does in this instance, you could redeem your firstborn son by breaking the neck of the donkey as a sacrifice. And then there were several, if you can't afford this, you can have this. If you can't afford this, you can do this. And they sort of barter it down depending on your economic station all the way to 2 turtle doves, which is what was apparently offered for Christ, which is a signification that he was properly redeemed, but also that his parents were poor. At least in the Luke version.
Well, it's not the redemption of the son; it's the redemption of the donkey itself, if I'm not mistaken. But you are right that in Jewish halakha you must break its neck with a cleaver. But we'll get to
axe, normally.
this part. We'll get to this part in the next part. It's in this chapter. But you are
Yeah,
right.
the firstborn son is normally redeemed with money.
Yes.
Okay. That's the
not-
way it's done now.
So now it's done with they normally will I think they normally have some like silver shekel,
5
coins.
shekels or 5 stones of silver.
So it's actually kind of interesting here on so it makes sense that now they're redeemed in a different way, because apparently so from Numbers 3:12, the firstborn originally served as priests until they were replaced by the members of the tribe of Levi. So consecration here has a double meaning.
So this is so the idea is that really the firstborns should be sanctified to God and work as priests, but since we have a priestly class now to do it, you give them money in exchange for your son.
Yeah.
Not
Which
to
is
be
interesting
sent.
because in canon, the Levites have not yet been selected as the priestly class.
Exactly, not yet.
In canon, that doesn't come until the genocide and the golden calf bit at the giving of the law.
Well,
So,
in the case,
sorry.
It's another clear example of times when this was not written in order, and the things
Well, I mean,
did
it does
not
say
occur
sanctify
like this.
me every firstborn, so it could be implied that
To
your
me.
firstborn sons should be sanctified to me and work as a priestly class, even though there's no temple yet. So
Doesn't make a lot of sense at this point. Yeah,
So-
or
they still would have had priests, but not at a temple proper.
frankly, could be
Yeah, they
just
would have had a
simply child
priesthood.
sacrifice. I mean, they accuse the Canaanites of sending their children through the fires of Molech and sacrificing their children to foreign gods. Molech, yeah, whatever. But the point is, if the last any time, if the politics and religious things I have observed for every single minute of my life going back through history has told me anything, it's that when the religious loudly and voraciously accuse someone else of doing something, it's usually because they're doing it. So I'm not saying, but it's definitely a possibility.
I don't know if we have evidence.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't think we have evidence that either really did child sacrifice, do we?
Yeah, there was a good
propaganda.
book written by actually Francesca Stavrakopoulou that argues that it was essentially a polemic.
Right, that makes sense.
And I
then we
mean, that
do-
is something people accuse others of doing.
Yeah.
Too.
But then we also have that line from Ezekiel wherein he says that God laments having created statutes by which they could not live. in demanding the sacrifice of their firstborn sons, and that this law was written just to horrify the people.
Mhm. And verse 5 here. So Exodus. Previously, we've seen in Exodus 3:8 that it mentions 6 Canaanite tribes, and here only 5 are mentioned. The Perizzites are not mentioned. The Septuagint adds the additional Perizzites to this verse along with the Girgashites. Rashi and Ibn Ezra comment that the Torah mentioned most of the tribes because there is no need to mention the other 2. Rashi adds that the Canaanite include the other 2 tribes, and Nachmanides wrote that only the land of the 5 nations mentioned here was flowing with milk and honey, while for the rest it did not.
Oh, yeah.
And
There's
flowing with milk and honey means milk from goats and honey from dates and figs.
Yes,
think we've
yes, you're right.
said
either
before.
way,
Yeah.
given the state of the land before it was reclaimed via modern agricultural practices, I cannot think of any real estate person who would be so shameless. And I know some who are truly shameless. I can't think of a single one who would be so shameless as to call that a land of milk and honey. Like it just, ugh. Talk about overselling and dishonest salesmanship.
I don't think it is dishonesty for example, we're talking about date honey because the land of Israel is full of date honey, if I'm not mistaken.
No, there's a lot of date trees.
Yeah, literally
Yes.
overflowing. Like Tomer is just drowned in it right now. That's why he can't be on camera. There's simply too much honey.
He's just
I mean-
covered in dates. He has to like
Every time I
dig through them
My
to get to
name
his
literally
computer.
means dates.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I see a date plantation in Israel, I'm like, imagine being dropped in the middle of one of these at night, because the trees are planted in like straight lines.
Yes.
So every direction you look, it's just like straight lines of trees. And I just think
Yeah.
like being in the middle of that at night would be really creepy.
It would be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like that's us looking at modern Israel with modern agricultural
Yeah,
practices
they wouldn't
after
have
a very long time. To say that like the first Jewish settlers when the state of Israel was formed, and we're just going to leave aside all the political implications of that, they talked about basically what they were doing to reclaim the land, as I understand it. It was not, they were not walking into that. That was
Oh yeah, of course.
largely
it was
desert
very
area, nomadic peoples,
marsh.
and
There was a lot.
marsh.
A lot of the land was not marsh. There's a better word.
Wetlands?
You know, like
Yeah, I
empty
can't think that it was all wetlands.
You know, Trump was going to empty the
Swamps?
Oh, swamp.
The swamp.
Oh.
That's the word.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit different. Marsh
Okay.
and swamp. Yeah.
By filling it full of water and scum. Okay.
Well,
I have a
in
couple.
Trump's
I have
case,
some
sewage.
I have some comments to read. So from Zar Narankar, did God just say he was going to invade every womb?
Oh,
Why?
Yeah, I was going to mention that the translation.
Does he
was
want to
weird.
be a baby? And what opposition is he expecting? I guess if he's that small, maybe antibodies.
I don't think it really says that he invaded the
Yeah, I think the
womb.
translation that Lawrence read, it did kind of sound like he said.
Yeah, so it said breach.
Yeah.
So the translation that I am using is Robert Alter's translation of the Masoretic text, and he notes here so that the Hebrew there means opening and is related by metathesis to bursting. So it is a vivid idiom of the first.
I think think
Yeah,
that the word
I
is
read
used.
that as
Sorry.
the firstborn being the first one out, and thus
Yeah.
the one who sort of wrecks the seal, shall we say?
I mean, the word that is used here is petel.
Yeah.
Hint, hint.
But it's not written in the way of it, like if it was the one that breaches, it would normally be poter, let's say. So I can understand why a direct translation would just say breach rather than the breacher or whatever. The one who.
And then I get a
breaches.
comment from Scarlett de Leonon. Says the hand and between the eyes. Doesn't that kind of sound like Mark of the Beast, etc.?
Maybe that's what they were referencing in Revelations.
Mm.
That's
Then
going to be
Eric-
a fun
That's an interesting
time.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to have to be stoned for that one, I think. Eric Wander says, when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land he swore to your he swore to your ancestors to give you, God failed to do that. LOL.
Yeah. Yeah, everything goes wrong for God. He fails at all his promises, and then says he's going to give it to the next generation and the next generation. And then 1,000 generations later, he keeps like half his promise, but keeps ragging the kids about how they're all ungrateful bastards because of all the shit he's done for them. That's the whole Old Testament.
Okay. Then Jason says, I forget if it was ever talked about in past episodes, but what is the significance of milk and honey? Did we cover that already?
I think
No,
we did.
but-
I think
Did
we
we?
did.
I
don't
think
remember.
I
But
did. Yes,
it was
the-
it was abundance.
yeah,
Yeah.
abundance of,
Okay. So that's what it means. It
Mm.
doesn't mean that we were having a terrestrial orgasm.
No, and,
Okay.
and it does not mean that if you chip the rocks, they would literally flow milk and honey. That's
Yeah, it's an I guess an
Moses says
idiom to
something
say
like that.
like this land is rich in natural
Yeah.
resources. Like it's a
there's
good
lots
land.
of
It's
things
blessed.
here.
it will
Yeah.
keep you well fed
Yep.
with
Okay.
tasty things.
And then Matt White comments, says, of course, Canaan was a land of milk and honey circa 1000 BC. Egypt was lush and verdant, hence the Fertile Crescent. Indeed. And then
East Egypt
Deviant
had-
Outcast offers 100, I think that's Swedish
Swedish
kroner, and
kroner.
says OHW? I don't know
Oh,
what they're saying. Ow? I don't know what they're saying there. Says we're closing in on the part where God murders 2 children for no other reason than breaking a law they were yet to receive. God's good and all the time, and fanticide.
I don't remember that part.
Oh God, there's a God is good all the time, God is good call and response. It's tradition, but it's used in those god awful persecution porn movies, the God's Not Dead series. The third of which was the only one that had any redeeming value as a story, and so of course was considered as selling out. And they killed one of the only good characters in it. But yeah, it's one of those mindless cliches that Christians like what would Jesus do, or fully relying on God, or just claim the blessing. Or oh God, there's so many. I can't even. I'm sorry.
What would
I need more
Jesus
gin.
do?
I don't give a
Refer
fuck
to
what
other
Jesus
people,
do. I want
refer to
fucking
other races as dogs? Would he do
That is
that?
true. He did do that. That is true.
to do that. That's what I have determined to follow. What Riker told Wesley. What would Picard do?
Nerd.
What did he do with?
I think Pete wanted to say something.
What did they do with this silver for the firstborn?
You said
Does
They
it
silver?
used
mention
the
Yeah.
silver
Silver goes
that's
to the temple.
yeah.
But the
I
temple,
think
but
that's-
there's no temple yet. It doesn't mention it, right? Okay.
Well,
the
this
silver
isn't
seems to
talking
be
about
the
the
modern
redeeming.
version.
We haven't mentioned the redeeming part. Over here it just says sanctify the firstborn.
Isn't that
I
what that
think
means? It means
It'll
No,
be
so
more
sanctify
detailed
it,
in next
make them
chapters, I
holy.
believe.
Yeah. So
The redeem-
this command is so far it's just you should sanctify your firstborn, and this
Yeah.
implies that firstborn sons would be sent to the temple to be priests, and then redeeming of the firstborn is a later commandment saying the firstborns don't go to the temple, the priests do, but you need to redeem your son and give money to the priests.
The firstborn
Um,
sons
I think Samuel
is
never had to be redeemed.
I said previously. I think it's in Numbers 18 more expanded.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
We'll
it
get
makes sense
there.
'cause it's like more
The
priestly.
law is long and tedious.
Yeah, so modern day Jewish people, when they have a firstborn son, they will, I think it's a month after birth, they will do a little ceremony where they will put the baby on a silver tray and cover it. All the women will put like their jewelry on him. People will bring like their silver and gold jewelry and they like kind of put it all around the tray and stuff. And then they'll do like the father will pick up these 5 silver coins that are like a shekel of silver each, and they kind of use the same coins. Everyone uses the same coins, They just kind of move. The rabbi keeps them somewhere, and he will like pick them up and say, "With this money, I'm redeeming my son," and he'll give it to a priest. And then the priest lifts up the tray and says something, and then I don't know. I'm not maybe saying it the right order, but that's kind of what goes on, and then there's
I think what the donkey redemption is the most interesting one, and we'll get to that in the next part.
Is it appropriate that all of this talk about sanctify reminds me of Simple Minds?
Sorry, I don't.
Is that like
I'm not
a movie or something?
Sorry, no, it was a song from before your time, children.
No,
Anyway,
I'm having flashbacks to Christian pop music. Help! Help!
Oh no.
And then Minute Rice offers $6.66 and says, "Oh boy, I feel like I'm going to need some alcohol for this one. Excuse me while I go mix a drink." Not a bad idea. I probably
also
gonna
add
need
in
another
the
beer.
scorpion spice that you also like.
Yeah, put that in the
in
drink.
it.
Hey, I am already ahead of you. I'm not going to wreck good gin with that. If I ever have beef eater, I'll take you up on it.
When I stayed in Camden for a few days, and I went to the bar that was directly underneath our flat, and it was very disappointing that they didn't have anything good. I mean, the best they had was Guinness, and that was just sad. And
I
so,
like Guinness.
so what I did was I had him spike Guinness with Jack Daniels, and then throw in some of this. So just coat a bunch of this over the top, and then challenge people in the bar to have it, and I'll say, "Hey, isn't this a hell of a lot better?" The reactions that I got from those limeys was hysterical.
Well, back to the text.
You know what? I'm going on TikTok, and I'm going to see if we can have you declared an honorary member of the Church of Fuckery for that.
I'm still upset we didn't meet that time.
Well,
I mean,
the
actually,
last
no, I'm
time I
not,
was in
because I would
London?
have been forced to drink whiskey with poison in it.
Yeah.
You only live
Okay.
once.
Well, I don't have it in my notes, but verse 8 is the commandment to tell the story of the Exodus.
Yeah, and they do that every Passover.
Passover Eve, yeah.
Yeah, but it is understood that the commandment is supposed to be every day. There is like this idea that Jews should always remember every day that they were taken out of Egypt, and I think it might be in the daily prayers, like this specific verse, but I'm not sure.
That sounds impractical. I have
Now,
The
are we
daily
on-
prayers are long enough.
And finally, verse 9, a reminder on your forehead. KJV translates a memorial between thine eyes. The Hebrew Bible and the early translations also render between the eyes. Chazal in the Babylonian Talmud, Menachot 37a, wrote that, quote, between the eyes, quote unquote, means that the crown of the head. And this definition is supported by Ugaritic texts. For example, KTU 1.101, lines 5 to 6, read, "His head is wonderful, dew is between his eyes." The parallel between head and crown is common in the Bible, like in Genesis 49:26 and Psalms 68:22, and other verses like Deuteronomy 14:1 and Leviticus 21:5. Other verses seem to suggest that between the eyes means crown. Is that a tefillin?
No, this is a lush cream.
I just put a sticky note.
I'm just showing
between
you
my
where
eyes.
it goes. It goes here. The head one goes over here, like centered between the eyes, just above the hairline, and the arm tefillin goes on your bicep. And then
I
you
know an
strap it on your
evangelical
arms.
Christian who tattooed the Tetragrammaton, the name of God, on his the inside of his left arm.
That is so
next
funny.
To his heart.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the idea. Yeah, it's supposed. Yeah. You're right. If you're a righty, you put it on your left.
I suppose.
hand.
Oh yeah,
It's actually
sorry.
next to
This
your heart.
is reversed in the camera, but yeah, it was his left arm. But it was next to his heart. In
Next to the
exactly
heart,
the place that you would wear the prayer. Yeah.
That's the idea.
Also, the
Yeah.
prohibition against tattoos, so that makes it doubly funny.
I know it's compounded funny on every level. I love it.
Maybe
I got a comment from. I got a comment from Mojo. Says, I am an ex-Muslim. I love your work as well, but how should I present my apostasy to my father? My mother is already an open apostate at home. She gave me a push and did my own and did my own research.
I presume that's
I
after
can't
the
speak a lot to what I'm outside of the personal experience of a Muslim family. I can tell you I utterly failed with my own family.
I would say
So-
definitely talk to your mother about it first to see how she thinks you should do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending
She's
on
the
where
one
you
who will
live.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Safety first.
And yes, so much safety first, because some Muslim cultures, some Muslim countries, and even some people who move from those countries to more civilized cultures will still be, you know what to be careful of. Be careful.
Mojo adds, says, but how would I say it to my father? I'm an ex-Muslim for already 7 to 8 years, but I can't bring it publicly in home. Only my mom knows, and I deconverted my older brother as well. Well, yeah. So you I don't mean this rudely, but you're asking me to comment on how to deal with people I've never met, and there's a gamut of possible options. So I mean, your mother again is going to be the best advisor in this case.
Can I make a suggestion? Among all atheist groups in North America, Atheist Republic is the only one I know of that is run largely by ex-Muslims as opposed to ex-Christians. There might be several people through that group, organization, and channel that might have more specific suggestions for you. There might also, and I don't know your parents, so I don't know how much this would be relevant, but some people are content to take a hint and leave it be and not touch it. Not everybody, but in my own case, before I had told my parents about my deconversion, but after it had occurred, my mother asked me to say grace. And so I waited until everyone was silent and then directly thanked her for making the meal, because I thought you should thank the person who gave you the food. And so she asked no questions after that, but it was understood. I don't know if that's helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then Cyber Showdown says, how would you help someone overcoming the trauma of leaving Christianity when it comes to their fear of hellfire and the end times? Again, I don't have deeply personal experience with this. I wish my wife was here at the moment. She was supposed to be. She
Lawrence?
called me to say that she was running late to be on the show. She apologizes. But she was raised with all of the hellfire shit. You know, my family were mostly Mormon. They didn't really believe in hell, or if they believed in hell, they didn't believe they were going to go there, because why would they go there? They're the good ones. Which, of course, that's what every religious believer thinks, right? Everybody who believes in hell thinks they're not going to go there because they're on the right side.
So while I was never a Christian, I was Jewish growing up. So while I was never a Christian, I can't speak to exactly, but I heard a great analogy that I think is really good. Are you afraid of getting coal for Christmas from Santa? If you're not, then you have the same reasoning to not be afraid of the hellfire.
I hate to talk so much. I feel like I'm taking more than my share, but I was a Christian. And I know I was a Christian who was taught about hell. And there are two elements. There's the intellectual element and the emotional element, and they are not the same thing. And I know that no matter how much you intellectually understand that it's an obvious form of control and blah, 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 the gut-wrenching fear that has been instilled in you for a long time is a separate issue. I reached a breaking point with certain teachings where I just couldn't live in fear anymore, where no hell would be worse than the constant state of anxiety. Each of us has to make that journey in our own way. You have to find what's going to work for you. I'm just going to ask you to please be compassionate with yourself. If you still find yourself being anxious and dealing with the fear, hey, that's okay. That's totally understandable with what you've been through. You are not stupid because you're dealing with these emotional repercussions of something that was such an important part of your life for so long. That has to work itself out. And there's no simple answer because every person has to come to their own resolution in themselves about the emotional aspect of it. And if you can find a simple satisfaction in just intellectually, it doesn't make any sense, and I'm sick of being controlled, great. But whatever you have to do, just be kind to yourself.
I do wish my wife was here to recount what I remember from her deconversion, where she was raised being, you know, a divorced family, half Catholic, half Protestant, both telling her that the other parent is going to go to hell because they don't believe in exactly the precisely correct thing. Because that's how God judges you, right? Oh, you're Christian, but you're not the right diocese, or you're not the right denomination, or you're not the right, you know. There was a joke that Emo Phillips told about that, where you can these two guys meet up and they compare how they're both Christian, how they're both Baptists, they're both Southern Baptists. You know, what are they? The convention from this, from the convention from that, and as soon as they eventually find some subtle difference, one says "Die, heretic," and kills the other one. And this is how God judges, right? But my wife dealt with years of nightmares about Jesus and hell, and being somehow correlated, like Jesus is deliberately sending her to hell. I can't speak for her, but she's not here at the moment, so I'm doing the best I can.
No, you're doing well. And I've found for myself that looking at some of the deconversion stories that are online, Purple Fox, Theremin Trees, and especially the series by Evidence, spelt with a 3 in the middle and replacing one of the E's, were very helpful to me in sort of walking me through both the mental and emotional elements of that, and getting them to kind of line up, because it's, you know, it's two different parts of finding your way out of fear, and ultimately you deserve to live without fear.
Back to the text then.
Yes, I think Lawrence.
Yeah, I can continue.
Continue until 16.
Yeah,
Please.
that would make sense. Yes, I am busy. All right, sorry. All right. Let's see. And so, when the Lord brings you to the land of the Canaanite, as he swore to you and to your fathers, and gives it to you, you shall pass every womb breach to the Lord, and every breach of spawn of beast that you will have, the males to the Lord, and every donkey's breach. And so this would be children, right? And every donkey's breach you shall redeem with a lamb, and and should you not redeem it, you shall break its neck, and every human firstborn of your sons you shall redeem. And so should your son ask you tomorrow, saying, "What is this?" you shall say to him, "By strength of hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, from the house of slaves. And it happened, when Pharaoh was hard about sending us off, that the Lord killed every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of man to the firstborn of beast. Therefore do I sacrifice to the Lord every womb breach of the male, and every firstborn of my sons I must redeem. And it shall be a sign on your hand and circlets between your eyes, that through strength of hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt."
I see Lilith is.
It's just
Yeah, I
the
know, every time
constant use of the word breach
I
is
know.
making certain parts of me want to close up and stitch themselves together,
Yeah.
and
Well,
possibly postcards with stabby
well,
things.
JPS uses every first issue.
Yeah, it's just firstborn, first issue.
Yeah, first issue,
yeah.
first one.
Yeah, so there's like the meaning
I
behind it,
know.
but there,
Sounds
he's,
nicer.
he's trying to keep the idiomatic phrase there.
Yeah.
And I get that, but I'm still the only one with a womb here, as far as I know, and mama no likey.
Yeah, I get that.
So, about verse 12, the firstborn males of your livestock. So in Hebrew Bible, it reads, Peter Shegel Behema. The word Shegel means offspring, young of beasts, according to BDB Dictionary. And the root Shin Gimel Reish in Aramaic means to cast or throw. Sana points out to the pagan origins of the name. He writes, Elsewhere in the Torah, the noun always appears in the phrase shegar alafecha, the calving of your herd, and always in parallel with ashterot tzeonecha, the lambing of your flock. Ashtaroth, which is a construct plural of the singular ashtoreth, can be traced back to the name of the Canaanite goddess of generation and fecundity, identified
Ashtoreth.
with the Mesopotamian Ishtar and the Greek Astarte, the later assimilated to the goddess Aphrodite. This makes it likely that the parallel shegel, too, is a term for fertility that is derived from the name of a fertility deity. Indeed, Shegel as a divine name appears in a Punic personal name from Carthage, Ebet Shegel, servant of Shegel, and has turned up in a list of gods from Ugarit following Ishtar. Moreover, in the Balaam inscription from Deir Allah in Jordan, a deity Sheger occurs together with Ishtar. There is no doubt that Hebrew Shegel is a pagan divine name, the origin of which was lost in Israel, that was used as a metaphor for fecundity.
And I think it'll be really interesting once we get to Balaam and cover the Balaam inscription. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I would just
what-
like to point out the constant repetition of root words from Asherah, who, is part of the Canaanite pantheon, and then we have her written out as a false goddess, and sending prophets against her and so forth
Yeah,
later. But
definitely for a while they're part of the early Israelite pantheon as well, because
Absolutely.
early Israel was polytheistic for a time.
Wasn't
Uh,
Asherah the
Yes,
wife
the
of
wife.
Ale? Yeah.
Baal.
Yeah, and
Bel
then,
or Yahweh. Bel would have been, I believe, their child, or one of them.
Wasn't
so-
Asherah also the wife of Amun Ra and Jehovah?
Amun Ra? I don't remember Asherah being a wife of Amun Ra.
Asherah or Atharat, depending on how you read it.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Okay,
yeah.
no one else.
So with Asherah, there are two very pertinent inscriptions. You can look up a Kuntalet Adrud, and
Ah.
you'll see the inscription of it. It literally says Yahweh and his Asherah, and then it has a drawing. So, and then there's it's unclear who's in the background, but it looks like he's playing. It looks like they're playing an instrument or something. I'm not entirely certain. There's some debate about it, but
Either way, she was the Queen of Heaven,
yeah. Queen
who
Anne.
Yeah,
beside
and that
the
title is
God,
given
and then she was written out
somewhere.
in service of henotheism and the Yahwist cult,
Mm.
which is sad, because I honestly think their religion would have been better if the Queen of Heaven had remained a part of it.
And now verse 13, the commandment here. So first,
Just a question.
sure.
How does your translation? What does your translation say for Sheger?
I think every male firstling that your cattle drop. That's the translation that
Ah.
that
Because the translation that I'm seeing, and it seems to be it's based on Rashi, that it means miscarriage.
I mean,
That
as I
doesn't
said,
make
BDB Dictionary says, oh no, that's Jastrow. Sorry, BDB Dictionary says offspring, young of beasts. But I did see from Jastrow Dictionary birth, foetus, premature birth, something like this.
Yeah. So verse 12 here in my translation I'm looking at says, which is Chabad.org, that you should give over to the Lord whatever opens the womb, and every miscarriage that opens the womb of an animal, which will be yours. The males belong to the Lord. Yeah, I don't know. Fetus that
So
is
if
not
a
aborted is
female
also called
opens the
Sheger.
womb
Oh, okay.
and the male is second born and thus did not open the womb, is it given to the Lord? Is the female given to the Lord? Is neither given to the Lord?
think
Admittedly,
it's
at this point, I think they only had 3 priests. So
Is
think-
the
I
womb
think-
only
yeah.
opened once, or is it talking about every birth?
It means the firstborn,
The firstborn.
Okay.
the one that opens the womb.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like Rashi says that the word Sheger means fetus, and so and he's saying that in this context it means a fetus that opens the womb, implying that it's a miscarriage,
Yeah.
because it wouldn't be a fetus at the time of birth.
right.
I got a
normally.
couple of chats to read. So Cyber Showdown says, "Thank you all. I remember leaving Christianity. RN videos I remember leaving Christianity Orange videos scared the crap out of me. I overcame a lot of fear just to listen to him. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And then Anton Gomez says, if there was any sacrifice for us at all, wouldn't Jesus have had to be in hell roasting right now forever? I like the way they put that. Yeah, so my impression was that, Jesus went to his winter home for the weekend.
No, but he got beat up really bad first. Actually, it's interesting. I won't spend too much time on this because it's not really pertinent to the text, but it is commonly said, particularly among evangelical Christians, that Jesus' suffering was more than any human being had suffered because he bore the sins of the world. So in some metaphysical, esoteric sense, he suffered more than on the cross in those like fucking 3 hours than anyone has ever suffered. And I have to say, as an adult, looking back, I find that sick and I find that insulting because I know 9-year-old girls who suffered worse than that. So,
yeah, well, those are girls, though. Then Rift Canyon Dreams says, I keep finding myself down to 09A texts. I don't know what that means.
Order of 9 angles.
Order of 9 angles, okay. Do you think it is fundamentally dangerous, or is there value within their LHP structure? What language is this?
It's a Satanist cult, at least as I've seen it. I don't know.
You know who I think would be best to answer that question is Stephen Hassan. See if he's had any writing on them. He's something of a cult expert, and if they're a group you need to be wary of, he's probably said something about them.
Then Zar Narankar says, notice all the mentioning of wombs and breaching and of all that, but no mention of the people attached to them. They got more specific with the donkeys and what to do with them.
I said that in Numbers 18, they'll be specific about the humans and the cattle as well. But here it's for donkeys.
Yeah, women aren't people.
And then Mojo throws out another comment, says, is it a fact that El Elyon and Ahura have 70 children?
Well, I think Baal had 70 children as well. I think I remember previously that I said that Baal had 70 children. Yeah, in conjunction with the 70 family members of Jacob and if I remember correctly.
Oh, maybe that's where the 70 heads of the orders of Israel came from.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
okay,
it's
I
hard
think
to tell.
The Ugaritic text, it does say that El had 70 sons.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I guess he was confused with Baal as well, But yeah.
Then Eric Wander, gifted 2 months, gifted 10 RN Raw memberships. Thank you. And then the Kindle says, question for P-Town. If God is omniscient, then does he willingly send people to hell? If he knows the destiny of every person, then he knows who will go to hell and is okay with that.
That's always a tough question for me to answer. Clearly, he doesn't want people to go to hell, and he gives us that choice. Well, at the same time, if you look at it from that perspective, I guess if God made everything and knows everything, then yeah.
But how is it a choice if we either don't know we're making it or are not given accurate and complete information? I mean, there's such a thing as entrapment legally.
Yeah, the way that all this works is that you're expected to believe the word of not credible people who we can show to be lying on countless different things. And then you have to choose which denomination it is, because, as my wife's family told her, the Catholic side said the Protestants are going to go to hell. The Protestant side says the Catholics are going to go to hell because they don't belong to that specific denomination. So God doesn't give you a choice. He gives you, he expects you to believe something that is impossible, something that has no evidence to back it up at all. And he's going to punish you forever, for absolutely forever, for having nothing to do with whether you're a good or bad person, but only whether you believed the right set of lies from the right set of liars. And that's it. And if you choose wrongly, well, then you just get punished forever because God is righteous. Bullshit.
God doesn't want anyone to go to hell. He wants everyone.
Then
to
why
be
did he
saved.
create a hell and make damn sure that most people would go there and say that wide is the road to hell and narrow is the way to heaven?
I don't know. I'm looking
God
forward
obviously
to
wants you
ask
to
him
go to
that
hell.
one
Why
day.
did God set and bait the trap to start all this in the first place?
To be fair, one question at a time, I think
Yeah.
would make sense.
When it comes to these deep philosophical questions, I'm looking forward to getting the answers one day, and I'm confident I will.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I
Let me
will.
know when we get to the deep philosophical question because that was not one of them.
I will.
Great. Phobos.
I'll accept that. That you don't know. Like the answer I don't know is acceptable. So, and I don't mean that in like in any sarcastic way. By the way, like it's
No, I
it's fine.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it's a perfectly normal answer.
Yeah. I mean, the obvious answer is there is no God, there is no hell, we don't have souls, all of this is made up. But if you're going to assume that all these things exist, then logically, God set up the place that he expects a large percentage of people to go. The majority of people on the planet, most people, just the most people alive today, to say nothing of most people who have ever lived, most people who have ever lived and are alive today, most of them will go to hell so that God can torture them mercilessly forever without them having done anything wrong. They may have dedicated their lives to God. They may have been perfectly saintly people, but chose the wrong denomination of the wrong religion. And so it doesn't matter what sacrifices they made. It doesn't matter how charitable they are. They're being roasted, tormented, senselessly, pointlessly, forever by a sadistic fuck who has no justification for his actions.
In fairness to P-Town, that's a very Calvinist Presbyterian version of God. Not all versions of God are quite that monstrous, although it does bring to mind what the tale Colonel Ingersoll told about the good Christian Presbyterian woman who was asked on similar grounds about the specifics of what beliefs were necessary to salvation, and by a minister who said, "Ma'am, if you're correct,
I think you've
only
told
you
us
and your
before.
husband will be saved." And she said, "I'm not so sure about John."
You said this
So-
previously. I remember.
I very likely did. I do have the mind basically composed entirely of quotations. But yeah, I don't know how Calvinist P-Town is.
I definitely don't think I'm a Calvinist from what I've heard about it. But strangely enough, if you look at verse 13, where it says, "And every firstling of an ass thou shalt redeem with a lamb, and if thou wilt not redeem it, then thou shalt break his neck." I get the idea when an ass is involved, like an ass is symbolically like a natural man.
I believe
Just as
August.
are people,
Yep.
people who don't accept Jesus, are they going to hell? Yeah. I mean, as far as the scriptures say.
Yeah,
So-
I did want to comment on that verse. Yeah, so
Yeah,
the
but I see.
reason why
me
it's
as well.
oh, do you also have a commentary on it?
Yeah,
So-
but I see the comments piling up, so maybe I'll
Yeah.
finish them.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I just want to say that the idea of sending people to hell for whatever reason is completely unjustified, especially given this lack of reason. So the comment for Phobos says, "Are Baal and El conflated as the same being, or are they different entities altogether?"
They're
Baal
different
is the
entities.
son of El.
Yeah, different
Yes.
entities. Yeah, El is
Yeah,
the high god.
I believe when they were composing the El Yahweh blend that eventually became the God of Israel, they were stealing a lot of characteristics and anything beneficent from any other gods. Some of Baal's characteristics, attributes, or attitudes, or some of the festivals attributed to him, for example, might have been kind of, stolen and reappropriated. But he himself was always different.
Yeah. So I think that this, maybe we'll get into the evolution of Yahweh a little bit more later. But so there's this point in time where El, like the word stops, referring to specifically the high god of the Canaanite pantheon and develops into just meaning God, more vague. And titles like El Elyon, for example, might be like, yeah, you might have like a title like that, but there's also the chance of a conflagration of aspects. So you see this in Egypt, for example. So because you have a god like Amun, who is the creator deity, but then you have Ra, and then when the aspects are seen together as acting as one functionally, you have the Amun Re god. It's viewed as kind of one. So you're taking the two things that are separate, and then you're just putting them together and calling it this new thing. And it's like the best example I can think of is like you have a person and you have a chair. Those are two things, but then you can, because the way we think of things, we can just put them together. So we have like person and chair. We could call that anything. We could make up a new word for it, and it would be a new thing. So just like a bikini is really two things, like why do we call it one thing? It consists of those two parts, right? So we have this word that takes different aspects and puts them together for their function. And in the same way, I think when we use L that way, it might be rooted in that tradition of conflating aspects. I don't know why I went on a tangent.
We got a couple more comments to read. The Kindle says, just wondering how P-Town can worship a god that creates certain people to eternally torture. Seems like God is a sadist. Then, since that wasn't really a question, I'll move on. Moonlight says, do you think Evodvo
Evo Devo,
would be
I think he's.
maybe that's what they meant.
Evo Devo
Would be a good
Yeah.
band name?
Yeah.
I was watching the systematic classification of life for context. Maybe they did mean Evo Devo.
They definitely
Yeah,
meant that.
Evo,
Yeah.
Good
And
K-pop
then
band name.
Tsunami says, I went to look for more about the banning of
Yep.
tattoos in Abrahamic culture / religion, and the most relevant article I found was on Forbes. Odd.
Well,
Okay.
We'll get to that.
Well, maybe
do
we'll get to that.
Can't
Yeah.
be buried in a Jewish cemetery if you have tattoos. Oh my God, I need to get tattoos. What am I doing?
Deviant
You don't want to
Outcast.
be there when they all wake up.
I think it probably had to do with
Deviant-
the fact that tattoos were generally cultic at the time. Like you didn't
Pagan.
get like tattoos just for fun about like anything. So yeah, I think because it probably had cultic connotations to it at the time.
Same with the
Deviant
haircut.
Outcast says, question for P-Town. What, if any, is your relationship to Kent Hovind, and in parentheses, relationship is an experience of, feelings about, etc.?
Kent Hovind was probably the first person that introduced that there is possibly alternative views when it comes to the history of certain scientific things, right? Long ears, whatever you want to talk about there.
Possibility, do you
Hovind.
mean unsubstantiated assertions?
Not entirely, but
Okay.
yeah.
Because, I mean, he
So I
doesn't
think-
talk about anything possible. He only talks about things that are impossible.
Right. Well, since I didn't grow up a Christian, and since I was an atheist, I wasn't even aware that there was another set of beliefs out there.
Well, these are not beliefs. Should have
Well,
been-
they are beliefs.
I know
They're
it.
not, they're not science, certainly, however much Hovind may pretend.
Well, Hovind wants
and
to
then
say that
besides
anything that you can't prove to be true qualifies as a belief and thus qualifies as a religion. So a religion is anything that you can't prove to be true.
Yeah, Hovind is P-Town. You should be aware. It is well known. If you're going to interact in atheist circles, okay, just be aware. We all know that Kent Hovind is a proven con man. Please feel free to go
Convicted
look up the records.
con man.
Convicted, absolutely. Feel free to look up the court records on that one. Who pretends to have degrees he does not have, which is what a charlatan is by definition. He has a PhD from a trailer in the desert and his thesis has been released online. It is an incoherent rant on not
Lilith.
even numbered with no citations.
Lilith, there's an update. The trailer is no longer there. Currently,
Oh, no.
hold on, it gets better. Currently, that university is housed under a stairway in the church that supported. It's basically gone Harry Potter.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kent Hovind is a professional liar and a convicted fraud who knows that most of his critical points that he wields against evolution are false. He knows that. He's been corrected by everybody. But he still tries to make these feeble arguments. He still wants to pretend that there are evolutionists who believe that we came from a rock. There's no justification for that. He knows that the definition of a rock is a solid form. He knows that ice would not be considered a rock just because it's solid, so it's only certain chemicals that would be considered rocks, and none of those minerals that would be considered, the parts of the origin of life, any part of organic chemistry or the origin of life chemistry, none of those would be qualified as rocks, and none of the earliest organisms would have incorporated what he would recognize as rock-like minerals. None of that. All of that is untrue, but he's made millions, literally, bilking people with that precise lie. So he's going to continue to tell that lie, no matter how everybody corrects him on it. And then he has disciples who will continue to tell that lie too, like Matt Powell, who will not get that no scientist, no professor, no textbook ever said that life came from a rock. They may have said that organic components may have been encased within rocks, meaning different chemicals that are not rocks being trapped within a rock. Something like that could happen, but that's not the same thing. He at one point he tried this desperate rationalization where he said that we came from the earth and the earth is a rock, except that the earth is, for one thing, not entirely solid, and two, not all of the solids would be considered rocks, even if they are solid, and we didn't come from solids, so we wouldn't have been rock anyway, and the earth is described as a ball of rock and metal, not just rock.
I'd like to use an analogy, P-Town, because people who study and enjoy science have been ranting about everything Kent Hovind has done, but what he has basically done is he has created his own fan fiction version of science, of evolution, of the Big Bang Theory, of everything else that has no relationship whatsoever to the actual science, to any of the concepts as they are understood by scientists. And then he runs around demanding that evolutionists justify his silly parody. It would be like if I said to you that you as a Christian have to justify your belief in angels because who else would have taken Jesus after his respawn to the moons of Saturn, where he would lead the Bear Army against the Leopardon army in the war for the fate of the universe?
I'm sorry that I'm sorry
I know.
that I'm interrupting, but
Just a second. That misrepresentation of Christianity is that absurdity, all that absurdity I just spouted, that is less of a misrepresentation of Christianity than everything Hovind has ever said about science.
Tomer, sorry, just let me talk for a second because I feel like I should.
Sure.
I'm not a person that really likes to dabble in the drama and everything, but I feel like I do owe it to say that I think I really appreciate what Kent Hovind has done for me, and I think that he is a sharp person and he's given his life to the Lord, and he's going to be rewarded with a wonderful crown in heaven one day.
Wow, he's actually stunningly stupid.
I'm going to say that's
really
bait.
impressively stupid.
I'm going to say that's bait
and
arm.
deliberately dishonest.
He is a con man, P-Town.
I would like to challenge you, P-Town, and anybody else listening. Have a hangout with me where you can present anything Kent Hovind ever got right. He's been an abject failure in all of his assertions every single time. Anytime he's ever contradicted science, he's been wrong, been proven wrong over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And this is not just with science, this is also with theology. He's been reprimanded by other young earth creationists for talking out of his ass and saying things that have been proven false.
True.
Sorry that I'm
That's
being
a bigger
rude
topic.
again,
Yes.
but I'm seeing comments piling up, and we haven't really returned to the
Okay.
text.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do
Thank
want
you,
to,
Tomer.
Arn, I do want to throw in one thing. Someone tweeted this last week on Twitter. In Germany,
We're never
they've
going to finish this chapter.
in Germany, they found a 12,000-year-old dildo, which precedes, according to young Earth creationists, the creation of Earth by 6,000 years. So obviously,
That's
this
not the old.
They found
hold
the
on,
Big
hold
Bang.
on, wait,
28,000 years old.
wait, I'm not done. So obviously, this 12,000-year-old dildo has to be God's dildo, which makes the comment we all come from a rock slightly more plausible. I thought it was brilliant, but
Let me summarize just so I can explain where I'm coming from too, because it's more than what you guys might suspect. Kent Hovind, because I didn't read the Bible, he introduced me to things like how the water comes up from the ground primarily when the flood happens. Like, you just don't get taught that just in everyday life, right? It
Because
rained for
he's
40 days and 40 nights.
misrepresenting.
So there's little
every
things.
Text.
There's little things about the Bible that I just wasn't aware of.
Yeah, but
Yeah, because the
Pete
Bible
Townsend
said it would
makes
rain.
up everything he
It was
says
both.
about the Bible.
Just to be
He
clear.
makes
And
it
that's-
up. The bit
That's just
about
one
the
example.
chariot.
I just wanted to.
I know,
try
but
to
he
explain.
lies. He just makes up whatever sounds plausible. He has no scholarship. Look, the study of the Bible, everybody here has an interest in it. There are scholars who have absolutely taken apart, the original languages and context and all kinds of shit. Kent Hovind is just a con man who pulls shit out of his ass. Nothing he says has any basis in scholarship, and we love scholarship. All of us have read different scholarship, but we can all bring it together and be like, "Ooh, blah blah blah." This different perspective. He has no basis for anything that he says. There is no basis in anything real.
Yeah, all he does is declare himself to be smarter than everybody. Can argue against every expert with half his brain tied behind his back, which is a condition I think he was born into.
Yeah,
How
so
can you have half
Can-
of one cell?
Can we please go back to the comments?
we should.
Yes,
We should.
comments.
I agree with Tomer.
Okay, so Phobos says, does Lawrence have any recommendations when it comes to books on the ancient Canaanite religion and the polytheistic/hedonistic Israel before Yahweh's cult took power?
I have a few. So when it comes to the relationship between Canaan and the Hebrew Bible, you can start with it's called Canaanite Myth and Hebrew Epic by Frank Moore-Cross. And I will, admittedly, it is a little out of date, but it still has some good info on it. It gives like a real good baseline to start with. I cite Romer's The Invention of God. That's also a good one. I think it's probably better written. For a shorter read, maybe you could try Early Israelite Religion from Susan Nidich. It is more of like, since it's so much shorter, it's more of like a basic outline of it. But those would be some bouncing off points, I would say.
Lilith, you're
Next
muted.
comment is Deviant Outcast, who says, wait, what? Is P-Town claiming Kent's the originator of creationism? If so, that's dead wrong.
I don't
Don't
think he
forget,
is.
he's also a
No, I don't
domestic
think he is.
abuser and facilitator of child sex
That's
abuse.
true.
I don't
Yeah,
think
I don't think that P-Town was making any such assertion. And then Edward Sosa says, what do you all think about the Bible being copied from the ancient teaching of Emerald Tablets gods?
from the Emerald
I
Tablets.
never heard of this.
Are you talking about like Hermes Trismegistus kind of shit?
Is that from like He-Man?
Or do you
Yeah, we're going to
mean
need some clarification.
It's
Or-
a con. It's a known fake that's in, I think, Madrid, or I don't even know if it's still there. It's the supposedly indestructible emerald tablet that has ancient mythical occultic writings to feed whatever particular bit of spiritualistic voodoo hoodoo you want to buy into.
Fun.
Spirit Science quotes it, so
Oh,
it's
gross.
legit.
Okay, yeah.
So to get back to the
Yeah.
text, I did want to answer P-Town's. He said something earlier about the donkey. Like, what's the relevance? So the reason why the donkey is the only unclean animal that is mentioned specifically and why it has its own thing is because the donkey, at least traditionally, like Rashi says that it's to do with the donkeys being used by the Jews to help bring the stuff out of Egypt. So since it was so important to them leaving Egypt, it needs to be redeemed.
So it's kind of an honorary clean animal because it served a
yeah,
purpose.
but you can't slaughter it in the
No,
temple, so
no,
it
but you're
needs to
like
be-
allowed to touch it, and you're not unclean
Yes.
if you ride it.
So it's redeemed. It's redeemed for a lamb, and that lamb is given to a priest, and the priest can do whatever he wants with it. It's not like sanctified.
Yeah.
The priest like mutton.
Yeah, I had a so my comment here.
test.
First, I wanted to I put Ibn Ezra's comment here because I just love this. Some say that va'arafto, thou shalt break its neck, means thou shalt write the word holy on its neck. However, I say that anyone who says this is himself a stiff-necked ass.
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Ibn Ezra's
Stiff-necked.
comments. Ibn Ezra's comments are so savage. I kid
oh
you
my
not. He is the most
god!
savage
Chill
commentary I've
out.
ever read.
Dude,
Yeah,
once we get to the New Testament,
Mumbai.
there is a guy that is basically just on the same level of savagery. Tertullian, that guy can go hard.
Ibn Ezra is so savage that we don't even have any surviving people records of anyone actually saying that.
So, okay. According
They
to
got rid of it. They were like, "Oh, he said that. I'm gonna delete all my books."
So, back to this commandment.
Yeah.
According to this commandment, the owner of a firstling donkey must redeem it by giving a sheep or giving the financial value of the donkey to a priest. If he does not redeem the donkey, the owner must break its neck, in Jewish tradition with a cleaver or a hatchet. So, why does the Torah command to kill it in such a brutal act if he is not redeemed? And Maimonides gives for at least in my opinion, a quite creative answer. He says that most humans would rather redeem the donkey with a sheep than to kill it in such an act. So it's basically an incentive to redeem the sheep.
It's a
By being
deterrent,
extra
yeah.
brutal. Yeah, every time I just think of the words of Christopher Hitchens. What a fine Catholic Maimonides would have made.
Yeah, the idea is that if
Fucking
he doesn't want to give the money value of the lamb to a priest, then he shouldn't get to keep the animal either. So it has to be killed.
Yeah, but he has to do it himself very brutally so as to, make it
Yeah.
harder for him.
I think
I feel
because
very-
it's
I feel very fortunate to have this team assembled here. I do. I mean, we had spoken years ago earlier. Lawrence was telling me that when he started his Bible lesson years ago, that he didn't really know a significant fraction of what he knows now, and so his perspective then was much shallower than it is now. So I have the advantage of having the more learned version of Lawrence now. And I'm feeling much the same thing by going through this and having Lawrence and having the rest of you with your your Rashi's commentary and all of this. This is the best way to read
you.
through the Bible. And I'm lamenting that I started this so late, but yet I kind of had to start it late, or else I would have been in Lawrence's position. And it would have been halfway through the Bible before I started to realize, you know what, I should go back and do this over again.
Well, I do admit that, I understand your frustration with the Bible, and I do want to sometimes prescribe oven mitts for the times when you want to facepalm, because oh my god! But I do have to, out of the Christians I respect, out of respect to the intellectual traditions, I do want to allow the more complex perspectives to at least be recognized as existing, even if that's not necessarily what you get on the street from the crazy lady who's telling you you're going to hell, because Jesus is love.
I'm going to read one more comment. This is from Hivesci, who, by the way, has if I'm getting all of the anonymous handles correct, Hivesci, I think, is the person who's been helping me in my Arachnomorph series. But anyway,
Yeah, that's her.
And, okay, yeah, and I've been working on the last episode of that, which is a great deal of fun. That series. Who would have thought that the evolution of spiders would be such a fun thing to write? But it has been. And this last episode is. But anyway, she says, fun fact, they often claim that the donkey has the cross on its back that makes it a holy animal. What does this say about the climbing moth's upside down cross?
That sounds like some Catholic shit.
So my final comment on this part is 16, a symbol on your forehead. KJV renders token. The Hebrew Bible reads totafot. In the Mishnahs, Shabbat 6:1 and 5, a totefet is a head ornament worn by women, and according to the Talmud, Shabbat 57b, it is worn from ear to ear. An alternative explanation given in the same tractate is that the totefet was a packet of spices to ward off the evil eye. It is also the name of the tefillin, or phylacteries, one of which is put on the forehead. And we've said this before.
Yes.
I just remember, like, when I was religious and I would go out and ask people in the street, excuse me, are you Jewish? Would you like to put on tefillin? And they'd be like, what the hell is tefillin? And I would say phylacteries. And they're like, what the hell is that?
Did I hear this right? It's a packet of spices that you put on your eye?
No,
No. It's warding off the evil eye.
Warding off the evil eye.
Yeah, I have a bracelet.
Okay, good, because you don't want to put it anywhere near your eye. I promise you.
No, that's the word. The word that is used in this verse is used in the Talmud to refer to a different thing, which some say was an ornament that woman wore, like a headband, and others say was a spices that warded off the evil eye. That's not the same thing as the tefillin. The tefillin are the black boxes with scrolls inside them.
But I think it points out quite rightly that this does also work essentially as a magic charm with ritual purposes.
Yeah.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like a reminder of the coming out of Egypt and that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Bind it next to your heart and your brain, whatever. Like.
So what verse are we at?
17.
Yeah.
You can finish.
You guys read too slowly.
Yeah, that's what's happening. And it happened when Pharaoh sent the people off that God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, though it was close. For God thought, bless the people regret when they see battle and go back to Egypt. And God turned the people round by way of the wilderness of the Sea of Reeds. And the Israelites went up armed from the land of Egypt. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had solemnly made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely single you out, and you shall take up my bones with you from here. And they journeyed from Succoth and encamped at Etham at the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord was going before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them on the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light to go by day and by night. The pillar of cloud would not budge by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people.
Okay, so I got to say, this is the first one that I noticed. This is before I started reading other people's interpretations of this. I read this line, and I said, a pillar of fire by night, and a pillar of cloud by day.
Yeah.
And I realized that's a fucking volcano.
Yep.
That's
one of many references to volcanoes, but this is the first one that I noticed myself.
I'd say it's more complicated than that, because there's been a lot of talk about Yahweh as a volcano deity, and while there is certainly terminology that if you look at it alone, it suggests that, but if you look at it in the greater context, it does not. So this
help me out with this greater context then.
Okay, will do. So when it comes to theophanies and how people see gods, I'm gonna actually pull up a quote here. from John Van Setter's. Regarding the form of the theophany, the cloud is often associated with storm theophanies, so this would link it closer with Baal, who was a warring storm god, and so was
But
Yahweh.
this is a pillar of cloud.
It is a pillar of cloud, and the reason it's a pillar is because it is far more solidified and directional than simply a cloud. So in order to have a direction, even in a narrative sense, it would have to be more stable, I guess you could put the word on that. This pillar of cloud, this was a way that a lot of theophanies happened in Assyria and in Babylon, in their mythologies. So, the use of on one hand it's fire, on the other hand it's light. You have one for day and one for night. So the use of fire, on the other hand, is most characteristic of theophany in Mesopotamia, where it is ubiquitous in reference to virtually all the gods in the form of brilliant light. The Assyrian and Babylonian traditions also speak of the gods being enveloped in fire or light as something that clothes or surrounds them. This would seem to correspond to the idea of Yahweh being present in a pillar, and it says in a pillar of fire, and cloud is something that has enveloped him. So in this sense, this is what you're looking at is not anything from a volcano. He is in the fire because that is how theophanies in that place worked. So it is not necessarily linked to volcanoes.
Well, not to a specific eruption, but that in the case, because volcanoes don't all erupt the same. Some are big, Mount St. Helens, everything go boom.
How is this not indicating a single eruption? I mean,
But
we've got
a specific eruption, but like the long, slow, soot and ash that can be released through a more extended eruption that will then glow in the night, but will just appear like smoke and cloud in the daylight. Like that visual is very much in line with this.
Think about it like this. Sorry to interrupt, Lilith.
No,
you
go
can
ahead.
So essentially in theophanies of the ancient Near East, it could have started as a volcano, but then by the time we get to the Hebrew Bible, it would have lost all volcanic context. It would have just been the way gods present themselves.
Yeah, that was my thought, that this, and the description is very much in line with a volcano, but that's not to say, since this story is something of a composite.
I'm sorry,
Do you guys
I
hear
think I hear
something
a
weird?
fan.
Who's running a
That
power
a siren
tool?
or a vacuum?
Siren.
I think Pizza maybe?
Oh yeah.
Here,
Yeah.
my bad.
Are you being
I
abducted?
should have it fixed in a second here.
Yes, please
It's
tell
like
us
a
if the
computer
aliens
fan,
abduct
almost.
you.
I'm in a Taco
Sounds
Bell
ranging
parking
in.
lot. I'm having a lot of tech issues.
Okay, gotcha.
What?
Yo, pick me up. Give me a crunch wrap.
Okay.
By the
That was
way,
unexpected.
this pillar of fire and cloud symbolizes the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, we know. Well,
I
no,
mean,
the Spirit of God, the sort of triune God version of the Holy Spirit doesn't exist.
I don't know if
yet,
it's supposed
but-
to symbolize. I think it's supposed to be literally the Holy
Yeah,
Spirit.
he's
like
there
the
being
Shekhinah,
all-
as it's called.
yeah.
Yeah, because they didn't know. They saw the movement of air as being spiritual. They didn't know what spirit was. They didn't know what air was. They thought they were the same thing. They saw clouds moving around. They don't know how clouds move, so that's all spiritual. They don't know how breath animates life, so that's spiritual. So when you see a fucking volcano, that's the most spiritual thing you could possibly imagine.
What is it with spiritual and
No
shitting your
volcano.
pants?
Okay, so I want to go back to verse 18. God led the people around by the desert road. So Chacham comments that either God intended to make it difficult for them to return to Egypt, or to bring the Egyptians who would chase them to drown in the Sea of Reeds. Maimonides writes, quote, the meaning of the passage would then be, God has first trained you in the hardships of the wilderness in order to increase your welfare when you enter the land of Canaan. It is indeed a fact that the transition from trouble to ease gives more pleasure than continual case. It is also known that the Israelites would not have been able to conquer the land and fight with its inhabitants if they had not previously undergone the trouble and hardship of the wilderness. Ease destroys bravery, whilst trouble and care for food creates strength. And this was also for the Israelites, the good that ultimately came out of their wanderings in the wilderness.
I would just like to point out, especially for P-Town and other evangelicals or ex-evangelicals, everyone here has said Sea of Reeds. The Sea of Reeds is very different from the Red Sea, but in all the cinematic versions, your Prince of Egypt, your Ten Commandments, you have the Red Sea, which is this giant body of water and a big dramatic thing, whereas the Sea of Reeds is a marsh, as I understand it.
That's what I was going to ask next, because Lawrence, his translation also says Sea of Reeds.
It is Sea of
So-
Reeds. Yes.
I think it's
It
the
is.
same.
In the Hebrew, it's Sea of Reeds. In the Septuagint, they translate it as the
Red
Red
Sea.
Sea.
And the Vulgate, I think, as well.
Admittedly,
that
if
where
you're
the
going
Red
to make a
Sea name
movie, the
comes
Red
from?
Sea is
I think I've said this
Better
previously,
Sharkies.
but
Oh, maybe not.
I think yeah. And the ready for battle that's the NIV part. KJV KJV renders harnessed out of the land of Egypt, and the Hebrew Bible it reads chamushim. According to BDB dictionary, this word means in battle array. Compare Joshua 1:14, 4:12, and Judges 7:11. The Septuagint, however, translates in the 5th generation, probably reading the root chamesh from chamushim as 5. Rashi adds that chamushim could also mean one out of 5. Targum Pseudo Jonathan translates every one of the sons of Israel with 5 children. Bechor Shor comments that the meaning here is, quote, stocked with food, as seen in Genesis 41:34, where chamesh is used for stocking food.
I hope it didn't mean both.
Well, the
Sorry.
reason why Rashi says one in like a 1 in 5th, like a fifth, and he says the reason is that the 4/5 died during the plague of darkness.
Oh, okay. Wait, I thought the plague of darkness did not affect the Israelites, and there was light only in the land of Goshen.
Yeah, but during that plague, there is I think it's a midrash or whatever. It says that the ones who didn't want to leave died from the plague of darkness, so that the Egyptians wouldn't see it.
Right,
Mm.
right, of course.
I have
Uh,
I'm sure
another
their bodies
I have
just disappeared.
comment here that is aimed toward P-Town. This is from the Kindle, and I'm going to ask that we not have in this show that we not have so many questions that are aimed at P-Town. I'll set up other occasions if people want to talk to him, but I don't want to focus so much on him from the comments here. But the Kindle says,
Well, at least in terms of his like greater theology, like I would say if it's relevant to the actual thing that we're reading, then yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
personally think that
Yeah,
we should have comments that are
judgment
relevant
call
to this
there.
chapter.
yeah, judgment call there, and I agree with you, Lawrence. So, question for P-Town: why does God demand that we worship Him? Is He a narcissist? Somebody in the kitchen, sorry. How can He be jealous of other gods if He is the only God in the Christian canon? And nothing against the Kindle. It's just that, as you pointed out, Lawrence, that question has nothing to do with the passage we're reading right now.
Yeah, I think if I want to say a bit of criticism to Peter. Could you keep the questions relevant to this chapter, because the
Yeah, I will do.
questions here were not really related.
No
Thank you very
problem.
much.
It's a good idea.
Otherwise, we'll never ever get through chapter 13.
Yeah, and I want to get to chapter 14 unless Aaron has something to go somewhere, and we won't read.
I don't.
14.
We
Thank
can
you
do.
very
We
much.
can do chapter 14.
All right.
Oh,
Finally.
I have
Full
to
speed
pick up
ahead.
I won't be able to make it through that.
Okay.
Give you a heads up.
But before we
We
reach
still
there,
have half an hour. Yeah.
P-Town, what are you on a time constraint?
I have to pick up my daughter here in 30. Well, we'll be
Okay.
yeah. We're not going to make it through 14 anyway, but
Well, we'll see.
I don't know.
we'll
It's only
we will.
29 verses. No,
Yeah.
wait.
since you read the dude's question, I'm just going to say I think it's important to realize that, like, I serve an interpersonal God. The fact that God can even have emotions, think about it, or ask a Muslim. There's a difference between my God and their God when it comes to that.
Okay. Verse 20 about Etham. The identity of Etham is not known. Some scholars identified it with the Egyptian Chetem and Teru, modern day Tel Abu Seife. However, this identification is not widely accepted because it is located on the main maritime road, which the Israelites didn't take. According to Professor Shmuel Achituv, the name Etham is not found in Egyptian transcriptions and could have been corrupted during generational tradition. And the pillar of cloud, I just had one example. Several midrashim give more fanciful properties and purposes for the pillar of cloud. For example, Tanchuma Bamidbar 2 reads, "There were 7 clouds, one from above, one from below, one from each of the 4 directions, and one going before them. That last one smote snakes and scorpions, leveled the mountains and valleys for them, and burned the thorn bushes so that they sent up smoke."
Where does this dude get this stuff?
That's
This
not
is
a
a
dude, that's
this
a
is a
midrash.
very old tradition
Yeah.
that the clouds of glory made the way comfortable.
It's just
So
so
the Israelites-
specific. Like there's 7 of them, and
Yeah, that's
Well, the
that's
different
I
directions.
don't know.
That's Jewish
That's how the
commentary.
midrash
They're
works.
very specific.
Welcome to rabbis.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you have to understand, P-Town, this commentary has been around way longer than a lot
I
of
think this
Christian
specific
denominations,
midrash-
actually, almost certainly yours. So it's not known to us because it's part of the Jewish tradition of backstories and justifications and possible explanations of various things. But it's very old and
Yeah, I think it's
the
all
Jewish
right.
tradition is that the written Bible, the Jewish Bible, is known as the written law, and the tradition is that there was a written law and a oral law that were given to Moses at Sinai, and so both of them, the written and the oral law, are from Moses, or from God given to Moses, like from that time of Moses, and what the oral law is exactly is the debate that goes on in like the Talmud, for example. But the oral law is considered to be, as an idea, to be just as powerful, kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe not as holy, but like,
Yeah.
it's still
Well, I
very
think-
important.
well, I think it's important to note that they probably traveled night and day, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why
Keep
they
it
would have had
simple,
to have a
right?
pillar
Okay.
for both. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, at least-
I mean, the actual journeys themselves, they don't seem, they didn't cover that much distance.
Yeah.
not
it
that
is
they would have
indeed.
been
Well,
at a
I mean,
speed march.
Yeah, but yeah,
I mean,
they
I
did,
would-
especially the first night where they would have gone through the night to get to the water.
Hmm.
I think it
Okay.
says that in the text, but I don't remember.
I'm reading chapter 14.
That's up to you guys. I can continue.
We
I
got
can
30
too.
minutes.
And now to chapter 14, and the Lord spoke to
Yeah,
Moses.
read until 14.
Sure. Yeah, actually, that would have been when my commentary kind of came in, anyways.
Mhm.
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites that they turn back and encamp before Pi Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, before Baal Zephon. Opposite it, you shall camp by the sea." And Pharaoh had said of the Israelites, "They are confounded in the land. The wilderness has closed round them. And I shall toughen Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, that I may gain glory through Pharaoh and through all his force, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord." And thus they did do. And it was told to the king of Egypt that the people had fled, and Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart about the people. And they said, "What is this we have done, that we sent off Israel from our service?" And he harnessed his chariot, and his troops he took with him. And he took 600 picked chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt, and captains over it all. And the Lord toughened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the Israelites going out with a high hand, and the Egyptians pursued them and overtook them encamped by the sea, all the horses of Pharaoh's chariots, and his riders, and his force, at Pi Hahiroth before Baal-zephon. And Pharaoh drew near, and the Israelites raised their eyes, and look, Egypt was advancing toward them, and they were very afraid. And the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, "Was it for lack of graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the wilderness? What is this you have done to us to bring us out of Egypt? Isn't this the thing we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, 'Leave us alone, that we may serve Egypt? For it is better for us to serve Egypt than for us to die in the wilderness?' And Moses said to the people, 'Do not be afraid. Take your station and see the Lord's deliverance that he will do for you today. For as you see the Egyptians today, you shall not see them again for all time. The Lord shall do battle for you, and you shall keep still.'"
Okay, Lawrence, it's
Yeah.
Piachirot.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
You know
Greek, you Greek, you did a Greek thing there. You said it like a Greek thing. Well,
Hey,
wow, I
that
can't
is
speak.
just something I do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
imagine
get it.
it's almost like you were educated in Greek. I
Yeah.
have to say,
Yeah.
this reminds me of a story my mother constantly tells about me when I was in I was 5 or 6 or something. And in Sunday school, they had the story of Moses leading the slaves out of Egypt. And I think I found it boring because I said, "Okay, everybody, I'm Moses, follow me." And I led my people out of Sunday school. And they all followed.
Okay.
So, Yeah, is this one of those many prophecies that Christians like to claim have been fulfilled? Where no Israeli ever saw Egyptians again.
I don't think so.
I
At
would
least
no,
the
I
hope
Celtic
that.
Egyptians were never
No.
seen
Yeah, that's
again, presumably in the
no,
narrative.
that's metaphorical, obviously.
So I have one page dedicated to the locations mentioned in verse 2. So I'll read
Oh.
them fast. So Piachirot. Traditional commentators derive chirot from cherut, the Hebrew word for freedom, i.e., there they became free men. Archaeologist Professor Shmuel Achituv, based on Sir Alan Gardiner, writes that the root P means house, and chirot is probably corrupted from chatcho, and so the name will be Pi Chatcho, meaning the house of Hathor, a major goddess in Egyptian religion. Pi Chatcho is mentioned in Egyptian inscriptions as a city northeast of the Delta. Now, Migdol, Achituv writes, located in the northeast delta. It is also mentioned in Numbers 33:7. Ezekiel 29:10 mentioned it as the northern border of Egypt. Jews settled there in the days of Jeremiah, in Jeremiah 44:1. It seems that Migdol here is identical with Migdol that is mentioned in Egyptian inscriptions like Papyrus Anastasi 5 as Migdol of Seti Merneptah, or Seti I. In the roadmap of Seti I, it is called Migdol of Men Ma'at Re, again, Seti I. Now, Baal Zephon, which is very interesting, Achituv here writes, the Semitic name, not Egyptian, testifies to Assyrian, Phoenician, and Canaanite influence over Egypt during the empire of the 18th and 19th dynasties. Baal, the central Canaanite god, was known to be especially popular and had priests in Egypt. The Egyptian god Set was identified as him, and first names with the element Baal were found in Egyptian writings. Most interesting is the name Baal Zephon, since Zephon is a name of a mountain, modern-day Jebel Akra, located 3 kilometers north of Ugarit on the banks of the Orontes River, and had the god's pantheon and a worship center for Baal. In Assyrian inscriptions from the days of Tiglath-Pileser III, the mountain was called Baal Shapana, meaning Baal Zephon. The Romans and Greeks called it Mons Cassius. The worship of the god Zeus Cassius at Ras Kokon, located on the northeastern border of Egypt, next to the Serbonian bog, is mentioned from the 5th century BCE. Some identified it with Baal Zephon of our verse. Others rely on a Phoenician letter from the 6th century BCE that reads Baal Zephon and all the gods of Tachpanches. From this, Baal Zephon is Tachpanches. They think Baal Zephon should be identified in Tel Defene, 33 kilometers from south-southwest to Port Said. Baal Zephon is known as a thunder god, so it's acceptable that a worship center dedicated to him would be located in a naval city.
Thank you for that. I'm going to jump into some chats if it's okay, if I don't interrupt somebody else. Majestic P. Beck offers $5.50 Canadian. It says, all kidding aside, the amount of knowledge and diversity of viewpoints that this panel brings is of such value to the honest discussion. Thanks again. I couldn't agree with that more. I thank you for that. And then jumping to the next comment, Mr. James, conductor, says, okay, and let me get this straight. God wants the Jewish people to leave Egypt, then switches sides and makes the Egyptians go after the Jews so that they may be taken back. Why? Well, you know how they give that. You know how they give that colloquialism that God never gives you more than you can handle until He kills you. That's what He's doing here. He's telling the Egyptians to go after these people so that He can trap them in the water and kill them.
He wasn't done showing off.
It literally says that. Like
it does. It literally says he wasn't done
glory.
showing off.
Yeah,
he was
to
so
get fed
them
up that they still had
again.
cattle to pull their chariots.
Yeah. Oh,
the horses were all dead, so they had to use those zombie cattle.
What the
And-
fuck was pulling the chariots?
And somebody found a chariot wheel in the Red Sea, and they say that proves all this impossible bullshit.
Yes, because I'm sure absolutely no ships carrying any chariots during all the ages of war have ever been sunk in the Red Sea. This is
Or
my
thrown
serious
anything
face.
overboard.
or thrown anything.
Yes.
Wasn't it like
At no point was a broken wheel thrown into the sea.
Didn't it
because-
turn out to be like a 18th century cartwheel or something?
Probably.
Not
That
the
sounds about
snack,
right.
like an actual wheel from a cart.
At least
You know,
it wasn't
I
a
really got to
cheese
do a
wheel.
show just on Ron Wyatt, who claims to have the
Oh.
self-styled archaeologist who claims to have verified all of these biblical stories by making up shit.
Yeah.
It's so hilarious. It's so hilariously funny that Answers in Genesis came out and said, "Yeah, Ron Wyatt is a fraud," and
Please stop using
we
him.
don't
You're
stand by
making us
anything.
look bad.
Collab.
For a minute, I thought you were gonna do. Oh God, you're right. It would be the perfect collaboration. Arn, get in touch with Ken Ham and ask
Yeah.
if he would like to collaborate on how no one should listen to Ron Wyatt.
I would really like.
Love it.
I would really like to see
Oh.
a series of Arn going on an expedition
Oh.
to find Jesus' living blood with 24 chromosomes, proving that he was the Son of God.
For a
That would
minute,
be
I thought
amazing.
You were going to say that you were going to do a show on like Christian frauds and pious fakes, and my initial thought was, "Oh, that's not a show. That's going to be a 27 episode long series just to cover the first few centuries of Catholics."
I got to get into some of these other comments because they are stacking up quickly. So let me run through them as quickly as I can. Mr. James Conductor says, "Oh no, we already read that one." And then Minute Rice says, for $5, says, "I have to send money for the on-stream doggo." Yeah, they're talking about you, Falcon. Okay, anyway.
Yes.
And then Mojo comments again. It says, "Is there a Jewish similar word for mazig or maz?" Tomer, help me
Amazigh.
with this.
I don't know what he's talking about.
The Amazigh are
Lawrence?
the
don't know.
native people of North Africa.
Oh,
also
Berbers.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
Oh,
Berberim. Just
Yeah,
Berberim.
Yeah, in Hebrew you would
no,
say
nothing's-
Berber, yeah.
Yeah.
There were
Right, and then-
Berber Jews that spoke Berber, like a Judeo-Berber language, historically.
I actually like
don't know
Ron
what word
Wyatt
they
stuff
used.
on Exodus.
All right, let's
Sorry to
let's
cut
do
you
it.
off.
You've got to be
Arn,
kidding me.
leave
You-
it.
you-
I did.
No,
I'm
let's
just
let
gonna
go.
You
admit
just
it.
All
Are
right,
you
we
just
need to
admitting
fucking
Take a
with
breath.
you're a
you.
troll?
I liked it.
No.
Yes,
I thought
he
it was
is
biblical.
admitting. He is absolutely admitting.
Someone's
is
just
a
got to
troll.
throw it out there. But look, this is why though. You have a lot
Okay,
of
so
other
you
people.
know, everybody, the young Earth
Yeah,
creationist
right.
community entirely has disowned Ron Wyatt, right? You know that, right?
For being a con man.
For being
I
a
don't-
fraud.
I come up with my own decision. I try to, but here's here.
Okay, so you're impervious to
I
all reality.
I was very
Here's-
hesitant to Ron Wyatt because of all the backlash that he gets. But
And why doesn't he? Because he's obviously lying.
Well, I like the way that it matches with Scripture.
Of course
Where
it
he
does.
went-
He's obviously lying.
Why he picked the Gulf? Because you think Scripture's lying, but
Now-
how he decided on the Gulf of
Do you think Ken
Aqaba.
Ham thinks
Wait.
Scripture is
I want
lying?
to hear.
It's an
I want to hear
uncanny
what P Town's saying here.
Okay.
I just like the spot that he picked out to go look in the Red Sea is biblical compared to the other.
Of course it
people
is.
out
That's
there.
why he looked there
It's-
and then pretended to find something there that, of course, wouldn't be there. That's why he
They look
found
like
the Covenant
you're gonna claim they're
directly
wagon wheels.
beneath. That's why he found the Ark of the Covenant beneath Golgotha.
Oh my
Well,
god.
let's stick on the Exodus before we get to the other stuff. But
And
but
yeah,
I liked his. I thought it matched with Scripture. And if you guys want to think that the coral was in the shape of wagon wheels and not chariots, then fine. But I think that the patterns are prevalent, and I actually
Do
liked
you
it.
have any expertise in either chariot or wagon wheels of any century in the past?
This is just confirmation bias, though.
Massively.
So
It's called Texas sharpshooting.
yeah.
You shoot a barn.
and then you draw the circle around.
around where you shot, and you say, "Look at me! I got a bullseye every time."
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you
It's,
equally impressed by the ecostones?
What I'm saying is I appreciated it compared to other people who are going to go look in a place that is nothing like Scripture describes.
Why would they do
looking
that?
for something that's
If your
natural
job
instead
is
of
to make up something, anything that matches the Bible, then aren't you going to go to where the Bible says
Except
and
it
then
isn't where
find the
Bible
thing that
says.
isn't there but say it is?
That's
if you
that's
want to
kind
go
of what
verify something, you'll go verify something by what something says.
First of all, yes.
So-
that method,
am I
that
free-
method of going to a place where you think something is, because like a document tells you that there's something there or there was something there, that's a fine method. That is a method of archaeological excavation. But the issue with people like Ron Wyatt or like Ron Wyatt's just he's a scammer all the way. He's a con man all the way. But when it comes to someone a little bit more serious, like Albright, for example, he did the exact same thing. He went to places to excavate where he thought he could find evidence for biblical narratives. But the first thing he would find that even closely resembled a biblical narrative, he just said that was evidence of the biblical narrative. He didn't bother doing further study on these things, and it wasn't until much later that we actually had corrections of his methodology. So Ron Wyatt is not a person, like, even if I were a Christian, Ron Wyatt is not a person I would look up to, because his methodology is it's not even really methodology. And at least
Answers in Genesis came out and admitted Ron Wyatt is a fraud.
yeah,
That's Ken Ham calling someone else a fraud.
That's pretty
Look,
epic.
I liked how it matched what the Bible says. It's simple.
I'm
Went,
sure
so
you
you
go,
don't
follow
care
a
if it's
place
true.
So it doesn't
going
matter
between
that
the
it's a lie.
mountains to a
It
particular
doesn't matter
place
that it's
on a
complete.
beach that
It
could fit
doesn't
a
matter that it's
million
refuted.
people. I'm just trying to tell you why, instead of just criticizing a person. I don't know anything about Rama. I don't know him. I'm saying that what I was introduced to, I liked because it matched Scripture, and I think that there's no way to prove it, but there's some evidence for it.
Are you sure you're not a patrol trying to make more people atheists? Because what you've just said is that you liked it because it fit with what you wanted it to say, despite the fact that everybody, even down to Ken Ham, has said that the facts that he's presenting are not true. They are factually incorrect. He's saying 2 + 2 is 5. That's just not true. It's just not true.
Yeah, you're going to
And
believe
so-
it because it lines up with the story. It doesn't matter that everybody says this is false, that everybody
This guy
says this is a lie.
literally just conned people and made up stuff and went, "Hey, look, I found what I was looking for."
there's a
Like,
great
Um,
quote.
If it's
I
true,
wouldn't
there will
have
be-
seen it if I hadn't had believed it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but unless we're extending this stream a little bit, we won't
that's
get to
gonna be-
read
Yeah,
this
yeah,
chapter,
I
and I have
totally
more
get it.
comments.
Okay.
finish my
Okay,
first
okay,
chapter
okay.
page, so
Oh,
sorry.
I got a couple more comments that I have
Sure,
to read,
sure.
and let me
Sure.
do that quickly. Eric Wander says, "Wait, I thought God didn't have power against chariots. 600 chariots will make God piss his pants. LOL. No, God doesn't have our power against Iron chariots.
Yes,
These were
iron.
obviously made out of wood.
Yeah,
Or
iron chariot.
bronze. They probably had bronze fastenings, but that's not iron, so it's fine. God can totally take them.
And then the
Yeah.
last comment,
Salt,
Deviant Outcast.
iron.
Deviant Outcast says there's not been any chariot wheels found in the Red Sea. What's been claimed as chariot artillery carriage was from a sunken World War II warship and coral.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Great. Yet another fraud.
I
Not,
see something in the Second World War that would happen.
Yeah.
and by the way, I want to welcome my wife who showed up a bit late, but she has been here, hasn't been able to say much. It's too bad that you weren't here in the early part of the show, dear, because your background being raised half Catholic, half Protestant would have been very relevant when they brought up all of the bit about hell and damnation and comparative beliefs.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Am I
A
still
bit
low?
low.
A bit,
Yeah, a
still
bit
a bit low.
Yeah.
I can hear you, but
How about now?
No, there you
Oh,
go.
good.
Okay. I put the microphone closer. Yeah,
You
I need to set an alarm for days that are off Saturday. I was out running some errands. And then
Fair enough.
Arn calls me in 15 minutes before the stream starts. Are you going to join us?
She told me she was going across the street to the store across the down the block from our house. So I thought, okay, well, 20 minutes, she'll be back, no problem. I had no idea. All right. Well, anyway, yeah, Deviant Outcast offers 100 Swedish kroner again. Thank you very much, and says Wyatt's not an archaeologist. Don't insult us. Becoming an archaeologist takes a lot of work, sweat, and muddy clothing. I still have a shard of metal in my arm. I get that. And yeah, we realize Ron Wyatt is not an archaeologist. He says he's an archaeologist, but then he's a professional liar. Everything he ever said is a lie.
nobody is claiming he has any degrees in anything other than bullshit.
This is this thing that concerns me, P-Town. People put a lot of work into being archaeologists, hands-on, out there working hard. He had a shard of metal in his arm and all of this stuff, and you're like, no, I don't want to believe that. It doesn't line up with what I already believe. I mean, can you see how insulting that is to the people who go out there and do this work every day? And Ron Wyatt is and he's insulting them to them too. No, I don't think that's what it is. This is what it actually is. And I wonder, Arn, do you know how much actual field work has Ron Wyatt done?
Oh, absolutely none. He found himself in Israel at some point, and he found himself in some grotto where he had a bunch of junk laying around, and he decided that some of that is the Ark of the Covenant. And then two people showed up who said, "What are you doing in here? You should get out because you don't belong here." And he scrapes up a bit of red, some kind of red residue coming down the wall, and so he scrapes that up with a bottle cap that he found on the ground, and decided that was Jesus's blood.
Wow.
Because he said it was directly beneath a piece of wood that he decided was Jesus's cross that was on the surface. So now he's in this room underneath. So now he takes this bottle cap, because this is how professionals do things. You scrape up a piece of red rusty material with the bottle cap, and then you take it home and put it through your own private microscope, or say that you do, and then identify it as blood, and that the blood cells spontaneously came to life while you were looking at them under the microscope. And then you can count, using your microscope, you can count how many chromosomes there are and declare it to be proof that this is Jesus's reanimated blood. And nobody can confirm this because you used all of the sample that you had in the bottle cap, and now the blood is somehow dead again.
I'm glad you knew all about this. But
How fucking high did this man get to make this up?
Even the Israeli government,
even
the Israeli government has come out and said that he was never allowed on any dig anywhere in Egypt, nor has he handed over the Ark of the Covenant to the Israeli government. None of that ever happened.
I have a specific quote. I have a specific quote by archaeologist Joe Zayas of the Israel Antiquities Authority. He says, Ron Wyatt is neither an archaeologist nor has he ever carried out a legally licensed excavation in Israel or Jerusalem. In order to excavate, one must have at least a BA in archaeology, which he does not possess, despite his claims to the contrary. His claims fall into the category of trash, which one finds in tabloids such as the National Enquirer, Sun, etc.
Does
that's
that
my
Also, I'm
so
giving
that's-
virgin birth to Bat Boy.
and this is
The-
the way P-Town, this is the way the skeptics on this panel look at it. They're going to go with sources that have been verified or other people have contributed to, people have put the work into. They're not, and they're going to discount a source where somebody takes a bottle cap and scrapes a wall and says it's blood. I mean, do you see the difference in why you believe this and why we believe Ron Wyatt is a fraud?
I don't know anything about the bottle and the blood, but
That
look,
sounds pretty sketchy,
judge
doesn't it?
I judge something by its content, and I just said that I
Are
like.
you saying that you judge it by
I
whether
thought
or
it was
not its content lines up with all of what you already believe?
What I don't like is if people who want to so-called be archaeological scholars for the Bible and they go look in a completely different place and claim, it happened here, and it's not in line with Scripture at all. I don't like that. I liked the little bit that I was exposed to when it comes to Ron Wyatt because it matches with Scripture, and I enjoyed learning about it.
Okay, so just
We'll do
throw
more
it out here.
research.
Yes, we'll extend it if necessary, Tomara. It's fine. When Ron Wyatt went to exactly what the Bible said, what was the name of the fucking
Going to
mountain where the
bathroom.
ark was supposed to have landed? I forget the name. Having a senior moment. It wasn't Mount Fuji. What the fuck was
Mount Sinai.
It was
Well,
Mount
it's-
Ararat.
it? Ararat.
Mount
Thank you.
Ararat,
Thank
yeah.
you. And it's
So
got
Oh,
yeah,
the
you
ark,
can also
right.
range
We're
mountains,
talking
and there were
about-
7 different options.
You guys
Also, I'm
want
going
to
to go
bring
to the
up?
bathroom.
You guys
right
want
now.
to
I
keep
thought you were
bringing
talking
up
about
his
the
other
Ark of the
stuff.
Covenant.
You
I'm
guys
sorry,
keep
what?
bringing up
We're not. We're talking about
other
Ron
stuff.
Wyatt.
I know you.
Yeah,
want to
still the
criticize
same
man.
stuff. Still Ron Wyatt. So to the point that you're making, Ron Wyatt goes to Mount Ararat, right? One of the 2 peaks of Mount Ararat, and he finds a dirt formation that vaguely looks canoe-shaped. And the reason it looks canoe-shaped is because there's a rock in the way that when the snow melt comes down the mountain, it flows on either side of the solid rock and leaves a canoe-shaped dirt formation where it rejoins on the other side. Vaguely the right dimensions for Noah's Ark. So a roughly canoe-shaped ovoid of dirt on Mount Ararat, Ron Wyatt then declares to be Noah's Ark. He publishes that he's found Noah's Ark. He finds scraps of wood and pieces of iron, junk left over from previous periods or people that have been living in the area, and he sells them online as artifacts, pieces of Noah's Ark, rivets from Noah's Ark. He makes a living doing this, and he's decried as being a fraud. But you like him because he went to Ararat, and that's where the Bible said the ark was, and he claimed to have found the ark, which is really a pile of dirt.
Can we
I was
please?
talking about the Red Sea arm, but we can talk about.
No,
We're talking about the crossing, but
go
into
we can talk about the arc stuff another time. I gotta let you know.
Yeah,
my
Pete, I'm
battery's gonna
right.
die. This Taco Bell Bible study is gonna be the end for me any second. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
appreciate it. Actually, I do gotta go. Thanks everybody.
okay.
Thank you
bye,
for being
Pete.
on.
Drive safe.
What a conveniently timed dead battery. But anyway,
Mhm.
I still
He did say he
maintain
needs to go pick up
that
his daughter in Hampton.
he did, and he hung
after
out. I get
trolling Mighty
that.
Chicken, I'm not entirely convinced that man is a sincere believer. Let us say
Oh.
that I am skeptical.
Well,
I
I would have doubted it too, except that I know people. There's people in my family like this. I was talking to somebody in my family today, that is watching archaeologists discover what no one is supposed to see, and I'm like, just seriously, does everything you consume always have to do with a conspiracy? Is it always having to do with the alien
Yes.
reptiles taking over the Illuminati? things we can prove to be true you don't care about. You only want to know the unknown truth.
I have to say, because there are conspiracies that actually happen, and there are conspiracy theories that go around, and there are lots of, it's difficult to judge, especially if the evidence is incomplete. But a good rule of thumb I've come across is that if a belief feeds your ego, it's almost certainly bullshit. Actual conspiracies that happen are not the they who are leaving little clues because they're so secure in their superiority. Whoa! It's not that interesting. It's just
Yeah.
greedy motherfuckers who are greedy.
Minute Rice in the comments says, as a
Wait,
former
did I miss
sincere
something?
No.
believer, P-Town reads to me like a sincere believer. He does off and on for me.
Yeah, me too. Sometimes.
What did I miss? B-Town's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. That's all you missed.
Yeah.
He had to go pick up his
deconverted. He's
daughter.
atheist now, and he went away.
That was fast.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
he's
that's
going
right. He had to go
worship
do a
Carl
thing.
Sagan.
That's right.
Now, can we
He
please
went
go
off
back
to get
to
a
the Bible?
university education.
I think we should.
Yeah,
I think we
Tomer,
should.
do you have more comments?
I do have more comments. God damn.
Verse
We barely
5.
started.
Where you up to?
All this talk about Ron Wyatt.
But he did do work on work. Listen to me. He did do things with he did say things about Exodus, so at least it's on topic.
Yeah,
Okay. Verse 7, officers.
Ah.
Hebrew Bible reads shalishim. The word contains the root shin lamed shin, which means three or third. Sauna comments that the word may originally have been the third man in the chariot, as the Hittite and Assyrian chariot crew was comprised of a driver, a warrior, and a shield bearer, but Egyptian chariots generally had a two-man team. The Septuagint translates the third ranked officers, and Targum Pseudo Jonathan renders a third mule. Whatever reason.
What the fuck is a mule doing with a chariot?
I
Oh
have
my
no-
god.
Tick, tick.
Okay, so again, we
Hold
have
on,
more
hold on.
evidence.
The mule is attached to the chariot in the back. They have two stallions that are like pulling the chariot, but they have the mule in the back because you always have to carry a spare.
The spare tire is smaller.
Let's say if the Sumerians had a shield bearer at the back and the Egyptians didn't, maybe the mule was like taking the.
Oh,
like
poor
the-
mule.
Now, verse 8, marching out boldly. KJV renders with an high hand. I think the original has not a high hand, but an high hand, if I'm not mistaken. Almost all other translations render with a high hand. Targum Onkelos, however, translates in triumph or publicly. Chacham explains that it is like a person who raises his hand so people can see him from afar, or that he is prepared to attack his enemy. Sana comments that it is a metaphor drawn from the depiction of Near Eastern gods with a weapon in their upraised right hand.
Yeah, I see that.
And that's
got
it for
another
my
comment I'm gonna
for this
read.
part.
Yeah, McCrennan says Tomer's awesome. Lilith is great. Aaron Ra rocks. Lawrence enlightens. Isaac illuminates. Lalandra is so impressive. And P-Tone shows up. Now, Peter, I don't want to have to read comments that specifically denigrate somebody on the panel. So
At least he's not here to.
Defend
Yeah.
himself. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
I like hearing nice things said about me.
Yeah.
It's always nice.
Lawrence, could you please read from 15 to 25?
Oh well, if you're done with your thing, then I did have
Yes,
a
I
thing
am.
actually.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too. Afterwards.
So, yeah. So this section shares a good amount of phrasing with was it both Isaiah 7:4-9 and 1 Samuel 12:16 and 7:10. The reason I bring this up, and we already talked about how the pillar of smoke was a theophany for them, but remember, it was not just a theophany for the Israelites here. It was a theophany for the Egyptians as well, because they also saw this pillar of fire. The same language for appearing in front of the enemy with their chariots and in front of their military formation, the same language is used So we have here, let's see, where was I? In the case of Exodus 14, the theophany has been present prior to the crisis in the form of the pillar of cloud and fire. It is the enemy who gets the actual full experience of theophany and are thrown into a panic. Furthermore, the larger parallel between Exodus 14 and 1 Samuel 12 is with the prophet as intercessor, as in the case in 1 Samuel 7, a holy war situation. So, like I said, the section in Isaiah and a different part of 1 Samuel both have the same language of a holy war, and that kind of comes together in what is termed by Thomas Mann the vanguard motif, in which a god or gods are spoken of as going before the king and his army, which I noted. But now we have here a mixture of theophoric elements and holy war elements.
Yep. Fair enough. Fair enough. And I mean, I still have flashbacks to like Prince of Egypt, where the pillar of fire whips around and does a zigzag in front of the chariot.
That was the
It's
bit
all
where
very
I was,
dramatic.
as a child, I was like, "That's not in the story."
Yeah, I can.
I was okay with the whole brother situation, but
I'm sorry that P-Town left, because before we focused on how there is the Red Sea and the Sea of Reeds, and they don't both fit this story.
Right.
Neither of them fits all of this story. Like the wind drying it out, but then the still being too muddy for chariots fits the Reed Sea. The giant
almost
walls of
sure-
water fits the Red Sea. It doesn't
I'm almost
work.
sure the term "the Sea of Reeds" was used for the entire Red Sea. By
Yeah, in your translation, but
Hebrew
in the Septuagint
literature.
and in and in
Vulgate,
all the
I think.
cinematic versions and the Vulgate, it was the Red Sea
Yeah.
for so long. And some Christians are just now coming around to it being the Reed Sea, which again is a marsh and does not have giant walls of water with whales going around in the back of it.
No, I
in
mean,
cinematic.
I don't mean that the Red Sea is the Red Sea and the Sea of Reeds is actually what they're talking about, which is something different. I'm saying that the tradition is that it's supposed to be the Red Sea, what we call the Red Sea, but it was called the Sea of Reeds. Because we did come, I think earlier on, maybe last week it was, well,
No, I think
it was one of the commentators said that the Sea of Reeds is in the south of Israel, as well as to the east of Egypt.
I know there are reeds and marshes, obviously, in the Egyptian Delta, and where the where the rivers come out. But there's also, there have been cases of, if you ride chariots, they will absolutely go down in the mud, depending on, kind of the wind and how secure certain areas are. So it's that type
it would have
of
got
thing.
conflated maybe.
Yeah, seems to have been conflated.
Yeah, that's possible. Right, and then they would have started calling this the what we call the Red Sea, the Sea of Reeds, based on the tradition that it happened in the Red Sea.
Well, yeah. So apparently, the designation Sea of Reeds was applied comprehensively to the entire network of lakes that skirted the wilderness in the northeast Delta region, as well as to the long, narrow strip of water that extends southward from Suez to the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. And that separates the coasts of North Africa to the west from the Arabian Peninsula, including the two northern gulfs, Suez to the northwest and Aqaba to the northeast. It is worth noting
narrowed it down.
that this
So the
curious
whole
lack
thing.
of differentiation between what to us are discrete bodies of water has its counterpart in Egyptian writings, in which both the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea can alike be designated the Green Sea.
And that's what that reminds me of. And this reference is going to only have any appeal to the old people in the audience. I mean, how does the Sea of Green relate to the Sea of Holes?
Wow.
Yeah, I know what
don't know
you're
that
referring to. It's certain beetles.
Thank you. I feel vindicated. I have a comment from Zar Narankar, who says, if someone is sincere or not, I think that the conversation can still be useful to people who may think similar to what the person you're talking to is saying. This is assuming you record it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
We did that.
Before we read the next section, so there was just one thing I wanted to say, which is Rashi goes through the chronology. I don't know how to say this word. Chronology.
Chronology.
Whatever the chronology of the Exodus up until this point. So in verse 5, it says it was reported to Pharaoh that the people had fled. And Rashi says that Pharaoh had sent officers with the people. And as soon as the 3 days had passed, so they said they were going to be there for 3 days. After 3 days, the officers were like, oh, they're not coming back. They went back to Egypt. And so that was the 4th day after they had left. They told Pharaoh, and the 5th and 6th days, they were pursuing them. And on the night preceding the 7th, they went down into the sea. In the morning of the 7th day, the Israelites sing the Song of the Sea, which is in Exodus 15. And that's why this part with the song of the seven, the part with the song in the Bible is read in synagogues on the 7th day of Passover. Because it's 7 days after they leave. So
Right. So 3 days out. No, we're not coming back. The officials go back. Pharaoh has a conniption fit, and the next day they ride out.
Yeah, 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah, somehow. I guess they after the 3 days they had moved further, so it took them 1 day to get back, but 2 days for the armies to catch up.
Right.
Which
Well,
actually
the
also
armies
makes
would
sense, actually.
ideally move faster. They don't have, children and sheep.
Yeah, I'm saying the officers came back in 1 day.
Yes. Yes.
So like a few officers would be quicker than the whole army. So that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess continue. Is it 15?
15 to 25, please.
All right. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Speak to the Israelites, that they journey onward. As for you, raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and split it apart, that the Israelites may come into the midst of the sea on dry land. As for me, look, I am about to toughen the heart of the Egyptians, that they come after them, and I shall gain glory through Pharaoh and through all his force, through his chariots and through his riders. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I gain glory through Pharaoh, through his chariots and through his riders. And the messenger of God that was going before the camp of Israel moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. And there was the cloud and the dark, and it lit up the night. And they did not draw near each other all night. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord led the sea with a mighty east wind all night. And he made the sea dry ground, and the waters were split apart, and the Israelites came into the sea on dry land, the waters a wall to them, on their right and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued and came after them, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his riders into the sea. And it happened in the morning watch that the Lord looked out over the camp of Egypt in a pillar of fire and cloud, and he panicked the camp of Egypt. And he took off the wheels of their chariots and drove them heavily. And Egypt said, let me flee before Israel, for the Lord does battle for them against Egypt.
Okay. Verse 15 here. Why are you crying out to me? The Peshitta renders, why do you pray before me? Targum Onkelos, I have accepted your prayer. Rashi explains that God said to Moses, it is no time now to pray at length when Israel is placed in trouble. Kasuto adds that the word for what, ma, could also have the negative connotation like in Arabic, and so the phrase could be read as do not cry to me, do not cry at me.
No time for thoughts and
the
prayers.
the number of times that Israel goes, oh my God, help, and he goes, shut up. As if they're running away from people with swords is the same thing as kids in the back of a car on a trip. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there?
Mm-hmm.
Shut up.
It's like, oh, there's nowhere for us to run. Why
Yeah.
are you not trusting in me? Why you don't believe in me? Of course I'm going to give you a miracle. You should believe that.
Yeah.
Every time.
God is an asshole.
Now verse 20, light to the other side. The Masoretic text literally reads, and there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night. Traditional interpretation of the phrase is, quote, "And there was the cloud and darkness to Egypt, and the pillar of fire lit up the night for Israel," quote unquote, as seen from, unquote, sorry, as seen from the Aramaic translations and the Mechilta. The Septuagint translates the phrase, "and it lit up the night," to "and the night elapsed." Sana, however, rendered the word for "it lit up," Ya'el, to "cast a spell," from the root aleph resh resh, which is used for verbs to curse or to cast a spell. And
Yeah,
And verse-
Rashi said something
sorry.
interesting.
Oh, pretty baby.
In verse 20, he said that you know that it says that the fire was during the night and the cloud during the day. So he's saying that when the fire came to replace the cloud, instead of the cloud disappearing, it went to the back.
Oh, so you have like a dual pillar situation. God is before and behind.
So you still had the fire at the front, showing the front, but leading the way, but the clouds were at the back, being more of like a shield.
And to obscure the view of the Egyptians so they couldn't really see what was going
Yeah,
on
yeah.
and plan an effective assault.
I think I remember vaguely some explanations where people try to explain rationally the splitting of the sea in 20, but the Bible here says a strong east wind did this. And there's arguments over whether how deep the sea is or isn't. You know, I still don't see a wind splitting a even like a 10-foot area of sea.
I mean, no, but it's, yeah, I
don't really enjoy these rational explanations.
it's not supposed to.
The
This is
volcano.
Hollywood,
and the-
damn it.
What do we
It's
need
just a
those
story-
for?
it's
This is
just
a Bible
story.
study.
It's just a story. It didn't happen.
Of course, a
It
shark
was
can
a
be that
volcano.
big,
No,
and
they
you
went
can
there.
totally kill it by shooting a giant air tank in its mouth. It's fun. Shut up.
Yeah.
There have been like times when lots of water have drained really quickly, like maybe some kind of like
Right.
hole.
Where the
or-
writers get inspiration for this idea of
Yeah.
being able to split? They must have heard of something similar happening, and how did that naturally happen? I get that.
Tidal waves, the water will
Earthquake.
roll out before
Things
earthquakes.
like that.
Yeah.
Eventually, you just come back to its magic, bitch.
The tide goes
calling
out,
me
the
a
tide
bitch?
comes in. You can't explain that.
No.
No, it's not. No, Isaac, it wasn't correct.
It's
said
a
that?
turn of phrase. I would never
What?
call
Yeah,
you a
exactly.
bitch.
That's what it says.
I like you, Lilandra.
Mhm. Yeah. Thanks, Evan. Sorry. Okay. Verse 25. He jammed the wheels of their chariots. KJV renders "and took off their chariot wheels," while the Masoretic text reads "vayaser," meaning to remove. The Septuagint, Samaritan text, and Peshitta translate "to bound," possibly deriving from the root aleph samech resh, meaning to imprison or to tie. Rashi comments, "Through the power of the fire of the pillar of fire, the wheels were burnt, and the chariots were thus dragged along, and those who were sitting in them were thrown about, and their limbs were all put out of joint."
See, I was always taught that the chariot wheels like got stuck in the mud and muck, although the land was dry for the Israelites, so shush. But then they became muddy again as soon as the Egyptians, and then it was really, they'd hit rocks and mud, and the wheels would come off and get stuck, and
Remember
something.
the clouds of glory?
Mm-hmm.
So it's according to one tradition I remember is that the Israelites didn't have to climb down into the water and then climb back up the other end like the movies show, but rather they walked on like a glass floor, like a completely flat, solid water.
Oh, like the magicians who do the walking on water thing with the plexiglass kind of a deal, like that.
Something like, I don't know,
sorta.
something similar. Like the clouds made a flat surface that they could walk
Hmm.
along. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't say anything about glass, but like made the
Yeah, made a
walk
path
through flat. Yeah,
across the top of the water.
yeah, and then as the
Sort of.
clouds, I guess, moved along, then it would have gone back to being, soggy river bottom, whatever, seabed.
All
There's
right.
also the idea that there were 12 separate tunnels. Oh,
Did you,
have you
I
never seen
think-
that?
This is
Each
what
of the
I'm.
tribes went through their own.
This
gap.
is what I'm talking about.
No, I don't think I did.
People like
Okay, that's
go
definitely written
a long
somewhere. A lot
ways
of the books have that picture.
try to make this seem plausible, like 12
Honestly,
tunnels and stuff.
Yeah, some of the AU versions are even more implausible than the version we had with the felt boards.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So there's 12 tunnel. There's 12 tunnels or whatever. I don't know if it's a tunnel or just gaps going around. But there's also the idea that they didn't go across the Red Sea. They went in and then came back out. So it was like a semicircle.
Hmm.
So
But
it was
did
a
they go through
trap.
the Red Sea or was it the Reed Sea?
Whatever.
The
So
Sea of Reeds.
That body of water, whatever it is called.
In the
Yeah.
Hebrew Bible, Sea of Reeds.
Yeah, but traditionally it's
Nobody
the
knows
actual
what's
sea,
meant
not
by
just
it.
a marsh or something. An actual big sea.
And like, how would the
Okay.
tunnels get there? Did they have that kind of technology to dig under the Red Sea?
No,
Oh,
no,
you
no. I
haven't
mean,
read-
like
oh, you
not
haven't read the
tunnels
Book
under
of
the
Mormon, I
ground. I
see.
mean, the water would have gone over them like archers.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
So God
I'm
was
trying to
doing
remember
his pretty
where that's written.
Disney magic princess bit with the
Yeah.
flowing water.
I'm sure there's a photo of it. Like we can't really share screen, but
Like a half pipe. They surfed through the water in the tunnel. It's silly.
Oh.
We got a comment from
Right,
Eric
dude.
Wander who says, rah, you guys are awesome. Much love from Argentina.
Aw.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Eric. Yeah, curiously, coincidentally, my wife and I were just discussing getting an Argentine boa. Since you
Ooh.
mentioned from Argentina, we were arguing over that for the last day or so. She said, "Well, you can't have it because it's 10 feet long. It'll live in the garage then. It'll be okay."
You don't have any cats, do you? No, you have cats.
We do.
Yeah, well,
I'm
that's
with
the
Yolanda.
issue. That's why I said, okay, if we have a 10-foot snake, I promise you it'll live in the garage or some similar facility. Because she has a valid argument, I'm not going to argue that.
Okay, I think Lawrence should
I can-
finish this.
Yeah, I can finish
this part.
the chapter.
True.
So, and the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters go back over the Egyptians, over their chariots, and over their riders." And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea went back toward morning to its full flow, with the Egyptians fleeing toward it. And the Lord shook out the Egyptians into the sea, and the waters came back and covered the chariots and the riders of all Pharaoh's force who were coming after them in the sea. Not a single one of them remained. And the Israelites went on dry land in the midst of the sea, the waters a wall to them on the right and on their left. And the Lord on that day delivered Israel from the hand of Egypt. And Israel saw Egypt dead on the shore of the sea. And Israel saw the great hand that the Lord had performed against Egypt. And the people feared the Lord, and they trusted in the Lord and in Moses, his servant.
And the Egyptians didn't see anything because they were all dead. He said he was going to prove himself to them, but they're dead. He drowned all of them.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure they believed in him for the, last 3
Oh,
seconds of
That's true.
life,
Yeah,
sort of.
they
yeah,
saw
final
it.
Looney Tune.
Fine.
Find a little Looney Tune. Pharaoh survived, and he was in the water going up and down, or something like that.
Yeah, how did that happen? Because, I mean, all of his cattle had been killed 3
Yeah.
times over.
No.
And then there was that other prophecy where everybody in Egypt was destroyed, and not a foot of man or beast would travel through Egypt for 40 years. So, the Bible can't be wrong. So that must have happened.
Is
somewhere.
that Egypt or Babylon?
Yeah, it was supposed to be Egypt. Was it? I think Ezekiel said that Nebuchadnezzar too was going to wipe out Egypt entirely,
Ah.
so that neither the foot nor of man nor beast would travel through Egypt for 40 years.
Well, that happens later. This one is just, killing everything that lives 6 times over, and also their army. And there's just it's totally not recorded at any time for any reason, because
That's
reasons.
a,
And that's only because the Egyptians were embarrassed or
Right.
all dead.
or dead. It was a spiritual death.
Lalandra wins. Lalandra wins this show.
You're not dead.
So
Um,
for this section, since we just finished off the chapter, I did want to cover a few things. So and quoting from Van Setters, so 2 important clues to the tradition history of the sea event need to be explored. The first is derived from quite a different study by Childs of the confessional formula of the Exodus tradition in Deuteronomy. In this study, he discovered that the sea tradition is entirely lacking, except for one late addition in Deuteronomy 11:4. The same can be said of the Deuteronomistic history, since the references in Joshua are all contained in units that are secondary to the Deuteronomistic history. The sea event is not otherwise treated in the rest of the Deuteronomistic history or in the pre-exilic prophets, and only comes to the foray in 2nd Isaiah and the exilic and post-exilic Psalms. So we must seriously consider that the possibility that the sea event is a late literary development of the Exodus tradition. The second observation has to do with the apparent influence of the Jordan crossing on the sea crossing motif, a point that was emphasized by both Coates and Childs. In the commonly accepted division of the sources, this is more obviously the case for P than for J, but then he goes into his own argument. But anyways, the original account of the Jordan crossing by the Deuteronomistic history simply records how the river becomes dry because of a temporary damming of the water upstream, which allows the people to cross the riverbed. To this, a post-Deuteronomistic addition has been made, in which the representatives of the tribes select 12 stones from the riverbed and take them to Gilgal, where Joshua sets them up as memorial stones to commemorate the Jordan crossing. So he goes into various layers of the text, and then he notes that he actually goes into another parallel, interestingly enough, and this is let us return to the first post-Deuteronomistic edition and to the children's question in 4:6 through 7. While similar examples of such children's questions can be found in various portions in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, the closest affinity to the form and language of this text is with Exodus 13:8 through 10 and 14 through 16. This may be seen in the close paralleling of sign and memorial, and the emphasis in both cases that observance or monument will serve as historical reminders of the past. The description of the event in Joshua 4:7 corresponds closely to the account in 3:14 through 16. The second example of the children's question in 4:20, and this is all tying together. Like, I know this might sound like it's out of order, but I promise you it's all tying together. The second example of the children's question in 4:21 through 24 is usually understood as a doublet of the first and therefore another source. And then he goes on to argue that it means that we cannot immediately rule out the possibility that both come from the same source. The closest parallel to the description here is in the spy story of Joshua 2, where in Rahab's confession, she makes the statement, "For we heard how Yahweh dried up the waters of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt." This is accompanied by statements of general terror of the inhabitants. The same response to the Jordan crossing by the kings of the Amorites and the Canaanites when they, quote, heard that Yahweh had dried up the waters of the Jordan, makes the construction of the two accounts by the same author very likely. The spy story in Joshua 2 is clearly secondary to its present context, but there is nothing to suggest that it is priestly. It would seem best to attribute the text to J, and then he goes into his argument there. So in the Yahwist's account of the sea event in Exodus 20, In Exodus 14:21, God is said to make the sea into dry ground by means of a strong east wind. This parallels closely with the interruption of the waters upstream in Joshua, which Jay then interprets as turning the Jordan into dry ground. Yeah, so
Okay.
the identification of this as a mythological retelling of crossing the Jordan is very interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously,
I know that was a lot. So
I don't know if everyone else is familiar with the term Deuteronomistic history. Deuteronomy of the books of the Torah was almost certainly written by the priest who raised Josiah, the boy king, in the temple as a little cult leader, and he found a book of the law. And the Deuteronomistic histories are like the Judges and Joshua stuff that appears to have been written around that time, possibly just by him, not necessarily all invented. I'm sure he took from whatever was going on at the time, but or believed at the time. But the idea, I had not encountered this idea that the story of Exodus, you know, you've got the plagues and the coming out of Egypt because blah blah slavery blah blah, but that the penultimate bit with the, you know, the Red Sea and the drama and was added completely separately and later. And that's very interesting to me, because from a storytelling perspective, because of course I first encountered this in Sunday school as a child, where they're very much sticking with the narrative arc. Not surprisingly, this is kind of the climax, you know.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Is my only comment here on verse 31. The Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord. The Hebrew Bible and most early translations reads the mighty hand. KJV, however, translates great work, and JPS translates the wondrous power, like Rashi's interpretation. Saadia Gaon and Ibn Ezra interpret mighty hand to mean great blow.
Yeah,
That's it.
I mean, that's a common phrasing, right? The right hand is the weapon of war, the left hand either of defense or guile and cunning, kind of a your heir will be on your right and your advisor on your left, or something like that.
I remember watching movies about the plagues in the Exodus, especially the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And like I would watch with my family, and everybody's like, "This is totally true. This actually happened." You know, exactly like the story. And it as Lawrence was saying, he was saying that maybe they and Lilith, that maybe the parting of the sea is a later addition or a retelling of a earlier story or a different story. But you see how much, like, the tale just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Like you never, how many calamities can you visit on cows, you know?
How many
Not
times
enough.
can you wipe out all the cattle
Yeah.
in the same week?
Yeah.
Oh, the poor cows.
Yeah. Give me some more cows. I got all these Egyptians. Who's God?
You're making me want a steak, dear.
Yeah.
Oh, now you went and said it.
All right, I want to thank everybody for having taken us through an extended show.
Yes.
Yeah, and I do appreciate Tomer staying up stupid late.
Yeah, it's like 3:30 right now, a.m. Sleep is overrated. Who cares?
All the respect, Tomer.
Yeah, well, you're in your 20s. You don't need it. All right, so it's looking like we'll do Wednesday again, same time.
Sure.
All right, we're all good for that. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And hey, make
Anybody-
sure
That's good.
everyone joins the Discord. And,
Yeah.
Links
Yeah.
are in
Join
chat.
the Discord. You got to be more specific.
the Milwaukee Atheist Discord that is in chat. Thank you, Peter. And
You're
also
welcome.
the Milwaukee Atheist channel, where I'm dropping Bible facts every day. Let's fucking go.
I have so much to watch. Yeah, I'm getting all my stuff. I'm gonna like reorganize my room, and I'm just gonna put you on in the background for like 3 days.
It's
Yeah,
not a
Discord
bad
is fun.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get through like 2% of the content. Yeah, that's something.
Day and night for 3 days. Eh.
We got a 7-year backlog of biblical readings. So
I can't even imagine. I have to wonder what it must be like inside Lawrence's head.
it's
No,
chaos.
I've known Lawrence for a long time, and we met a long time ago. And but I mean, the amount that he's learned since then.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely started taking it more seriously at some point, and I think it has changed me as a person. All
Yeah.
this learning,
Mm-hmm.
because I used to be like, one of those. I just used to be kind of mad at all religions and religious people just by default, and then
Oh, I know
started,
that stage. I think I'm
Yeah.
still in it.
Yeah, you are,
a little bit.
as
Uh,
is evident from this stream.
Yeah, but after talking to so many people and like learning the scholarship behind everything, I can, for the most part, unless someone's like really bonkers, I can at least put myself in their shoes, and I can at least understand where they're coming from. From where they're at, I can get the conclusions that they came to. But then when you get to something, to what P-Town was saying earlier about how he just kind of liked it and so he accepted it, and that kind of blatant confirmation bias,
Yeah.
that's very, like, the thing is, scholars, they don't have that
Scholars.
kind of thinking. They like people who are actually experts in this field do not have that kind of thinking. Even the theistic scholars don't have that kind of thinking. They do not go about it like that. So
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I don't know, P-Town's home life or anything, and I still don't know if he's a troll or for real, but let's go with he's for real. He needs to look at the criticism more seriously, and it's fine if you come out of that, still a Christian, but the important part is how you go across it. So if your methodology is if it at least makes sense, I don't really care, right? Like, if we can
Okay.
understand each other and we can get along, great.
As a former evangelical, I could do an entire show on how we were explicitly trained in dishonest methods of thought that are the exact antithesis of scholarly and scientific methods of thought. Because the way that P-Town is thinking is incredibly dishonest, but it's also how I was explicitly taught to handle all religious questions.
Would you like to make some bullet points about that, Lilith? Because I want to do that video.
Okay. Yeah.
And me too.
All right. I will get those for you. Peter, remind me.
I will.
When
I
I
the
will.
Arn
next 2 days are.
when Arn said kind of wonder what's going on in Lawrence's head, I kind of thought of that Simpsons episode where I think Bart was wondering what Homer was thinking, and he's thinking meow 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 meow. And so now I've got meow 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 in my head.
Whereas I'm thinking it's more like the conspiracy theory guy who's like, okay, look, and he's got the ribbons and the ropes tied, and it all connects. It's all connected, and
It's somewhere in there, somewhere in
posters
between.
all over the wall.
We were doing a Book of Mormon discussion, and Bryce said, I could spend 2 hours talking about the evil corruption of Mormon history, and I'm like, would you like to spend 2 hours doing that? I said, yeah, I could do that, but it ended up being 6 to 8. We had to divide it up into episodes because there was so much
I have a lot
vicious
of thoughts.
dirt.
Yeah, no, that does not surprise me in the slightest.
So
seem to
when
be
Lilith said
trying
a
to make
similar
up.
thing, I'm like, yeah, I want to have this. I want to have this discussion.
I am
It's
at
really-
your disposal.
It's really hard not to get sucked into it with y'all are put so much work into trying to understand what scholars are saying about Exodus, and you're reading everything, and some of the scholars that y'all are reading are theists themselves, and then like for people just be like, no, I have better evidence, and never present any better evidence. It's like,
Mhm.
no, I mean, how it's kind of disrespectful, scornful, and they don't mean it to be that way.
They
But
don't. But that breaks into the no true Christian fallacy, which I'm just going to call it that from now on. But remember, I don't know if you were taught this too. I know I was, that explicitly those Christians who didn't think correctly were not true Christians. And correctly, as we've mentioned already in this stream with the Scottish lady quote, could mean to a ridiculous degree of specificity. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah, okay. I bullet points. I
Yeah, I want to. I
write
want to
so
do
much.
that. I want to do that interview, and I want to be. I want you to have points so that we don't miss anything. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, one last comment from Hivesci again. $4.99. Thank you very much. Says thanks everyone on the panel, especially P Town, for coming into the Lion's Den.
I do respect that. I do respect that.
Yeah, I do too.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Join Lawrence's Discord.
Yes. They're already in there.
P-Town, not P-Town.
Everyone,
Peter, please
everyone
leave.
is there now.
Yeah, I'm there. Unfortunately.
All right.
No, I mean like loads of people joined just now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah,
can't
thanks
wait.
everyone for watching.
Ah, okay.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.